Part 257. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2570. Tisk, tisk, this generalissimo dares to threaten me. He is quite brave. Jia Yan was sitting in the office. He didn't actually need to look back or turn his gaze away. From a mere few hundred meters away, he could naturally tell that the generalissimo was looking at him lovingly, and he couldn't help but feel a headache. Tisk tisk. Speaking of which, he hasn't experienced real life for a long time, and the feeling of warmth in human relationships has gradually become thinner, so looking at him from the outside, it feels like he is frozen thousands of feet. But just now, he inexplicably felt the old marshal's love for the country, and even he was a little moved. Although this world was still a fictional world before, and the rules and legends were all false, but now, it makes Jia Yan feel a strong sense of reality. Okay, originally I was willing to sacrifice my life, but since this old man asked me so, let's just give him some face. I'll put more energy into directing the next battle personally. Tisk tisk, it's troublesome. Jia Yan curled his lips helplessly, then picked up the phone. Hey, tell me which countries have more serious border harassment. Yes, name them and I will analyze them. This, and this, okay, let's just declare war on them tomorrow. Jia Yan casually clicked on a few names on the list sent by the intelligence officer, and then handed it over to his subordinates to handle the next steps. After receiving the list of names pointed out by Jia Yan, all the intelligence officers and staff were stunned and looked at each other. They were stunned that Jia Yan didn't care about the warnings and threats from foreign powers and actually went to war with other countries again. You must know that a country's war potential is limited. Even a hegemonic country does not dare to go to war with too many countries, because their national power will be consumed if they fight for a long time. Xinhe Kingdom has violated too many definitions of war on this planet, especially after targeting Xinbei Kingdom, which had a similar national power. It directly defeated the 13 countries, and now it has wiped out all 13 countries. The national strength seems to be still there. Not too much is consumed. This law-breaking result has already caused a large number of contemporary war scholars to scratch their heads and cannot figure out why. In fact, the reason is very simple. It is not because the black country violated the law that war consumes national power, but because of the unprecedented concept of the commander. Jia Yan's battles along the way seemed to be consuming the national power of the Xinhe Kingdom, but he had already been considering this issue, so he always preserved the domestic interests of the Xinhe Kingdom, even if some industries were destined to be destroyed by the war. Becomes weak, but he will also use other related industries to make up for it. Of course, the more important thing is that he insists on using war to support war. With the results of successive battles, the resources and benefits obtained by Xinhe after bulldozing more than a dozen countries are absolutely unprecedented and terrifying, even when he first took over. Only partial benefits can be obtained, but these benefits are fed back to the country, which is definitely enough to make up for the country's losses in this war. This is the reason why Xinye's national strength increases the more it fights. If Jia Yan is willing to play it safe, take some time to run relevant domestic industries, and use the knowledge he brings from the outside world, even if he has not been involved in people's livelihood before, he may be able to quickly develop this Xinhe country to the level of a hegemonic country. Even more than that. If we launch a world war by then, we will probably have a much greater chance of winning. But he was destined not to waste his time on this tiny planet, making trouble here, all for the purpose of gradually accumulating an advantage against the white dolphin creature. In this world, Jia Yan is called the Black God, while the white dolphin is called the White God. Their energy is integrated into every aspect of the world. Although Jia Yan only occupies a very small minority, there are many believers, and his energy he also possesses quite unique positive and negative explosive power. Even if he cultivates the existence of his energy, he only gets a little bit of it, but he still has a combat power that is slightly better than that of the same level. This is why Jia Yan has so many followers. While Jia Yan was making trouble in the Xinhe kingdom, he had roughly figured out how he would subvert the White God next. In short, energy is on the one hand, and on the other hand, we must start a war of gods to weaken the power of the White Dolphins from the root, so that we can finally determine our chances of winning. To put it bluntly, his entire journey in this world, including his current fight for Nobue country, was all done to defeat the White Dolphin creature. Marshal, you actually chose the Great Heavenly Kingdom. This country is the most powerful country in our region. There have been rumors from the outside world that the power of this Great Heavenly Kingdom is enough to destroy other small countries around us. Please take back your life. A chief of staff, holding a gun guarded by several soldiers behind him, rushed to Jia Yan with an expression as if he was willing to die generously. Oh! The Great Heavenly Kingdom, do you know that the national strength of the Great Heavenly Kingdom is indeed capable of rivaling all the surrounding countries? If you dare to guarantee that you know, I can withdraw my order immediately, but you have to provide evidence. Come. Jia Yan looked at the chief of staff, who seemed to be fearless in life and death, and came to appeal. He had the memory of this person, and he should be a senior member of a certain staff team. I don't have any definite evidence, but there are many powerful people in the Great Heavenly Kingdom, and the country's land is also large. In the past few hundred years, this country has not lost a few foreign wars. I think it is absolutely safe for us to provoke this old powerful country. It was a foolhardy move. Haha, is it foolhardy to deal with the Great Heavenly Kingdom? This marshal was preparing to go to war with the overlord country. Why didn't you come to persuade me then? Well, retreat. If you don't retreat, I have reason to believe. What connection do you have with this great kingdom of heaven? What Jia Yan said made the staff officer who came to express his feelings speechless. In the end, he had no choice but to retreat with fists in his hands. The chief of staff does not need to participate in the staff work of the Great Heavenly Kingdom. Do you know what I mean? Clear. The secretary who followed him nodded and exited directly. Although this chief of staff seems to be for the good of the country, there is indeed something fishy about it. Because Jia Yan tries not to use his own body's detection method, he really doesn't notice whether this chief of staff, who doesn't often hang around in front of him, is an undercover agent. This is also a problem that Xinhe country has to face now. That is the question of whether people are trustworthy. Jia Yan's time in power was too short. Even if he used it quite smoothly and there were no objections, whether these people were spies and intelligence personnel of domestic and foreign forces, so they were basically assassins, even he could not find them one by one. Mastery and confirmation. There is a bad thing about this world, that is, Jia Yan cannot use all his strength, at least not yet, because the so-called body is not capable of integrating the power of his body, which is hidden in the subspace gap of this world. That is to say, it is like being in this world, but not like being in this world. If you insist on describing it, if his body wants to leave this world, he can use his subspace talent anytime and anywhere. With strength, you can get out of trouble. But this also shows that the main body cannot directly enter this world. If it enters really forcefully, the world will either collapse or be discovered by white dolphins and others. They will use the power of the world to fight with Jia Yan and others. In the end, who will lose and who will win? It's really unknown. In that case, the disappearance of the entire world is absolute. White Dolphin wants to use this world to promote himself. Why doesn't Jia Yan want to use this world to promote his own domain master strength? What a shame it disappeared. After the staff officer was taken down, Jia Yan entered his secret room as a matter of course. There is an energy channel in this secret room, an energy input highway that leads directly to the outside world. On this highway, a large amount of energy is snatched from various outside countries at all times and transported by thousands of trucks. Come. The energy sent by these trucks will be unloaded when it reaches the outside of the pipeline. No one knows where this massive energy will be used. But what they don't know is that this energy has no other use at all. The end of the road is where the energy finally disappears. They will be sent to the energy pipeline through a secret channel, and this pipeline will pass through a secret route of dozens of kilometers and finally reach Jia Yan's marshal's mansion and connect with his secret room. Gurgling, gurgling. The energy was swallowed by Jia Yan whale. The staff who control the pipeline from outside don't know how the energy disappears here. In short, they are monitoring the changes in the pipeline every time. After seeing the change in the energy value, they will quickly open the energy gate, causing the energy to disappear. The energy after the acquisition was replenished again. No one knew that this energy was actually swallowed up by Jia Yan himself. Well, the energy this time is pretty good. It should come from the stronger Su country. It seems that the stronger country will be able to capture more energy in the end. Jia Yan nodded and closed his mouth. The energy flows from his mouth. Although he can absorb energy with his palms or other body parts, Jia Yan always feels that using his mouth is more ritualistic. After all, he is a mosquito, and mosquitoes suck blood. He has transformed into the Jia Yan of this world. If he does not agree with this, then he would be forgetting his ancestors. Speaking of which, this body is different from my previous clones. A clone is a clone, but the me in this world can be regarded as a real life. If I give up control of this body and brain, I might not be able to survive. How long does it take for the consciousness between the two bodies to deviate, because this is one life? Jia Yan wiped his mouth, felt his own energy, and nodded with satisfaction. On this planet or in this world, if anyone saw the process of his cultivation, they would definitely be stunned, because even if some strong people can absorb it faster than his body, they will definitely not absorb this kind of messy weak energy. Instead, he will use higher level energy that is easier to digest. Unlike Jia Yan, who has no taboos and absorbs whatever energy he has, he is not afraid of going crazy or having any consequences. If I weren't afraid of those guys finding out, it wouldn't be a problem for me to hold the planet and start smoking now. Jia Yan walked out of the office. In fact, after playing the war game for so long, he didn't really get into it, but he always felt a little bored. Fortunately, during this boring process, there were so-called overlord countries and protests from various countries from time to time, which made him feel a little interesting. Besides, these days will be over soon. Because there is an acquaintance, no, it should be said that he is the closest and most familiar existence in his mosquito life, and he will soon arrive at his side. With her arrival, I'm afraid Jia Yan will have more fun, otherwise he will be playing war games on this planet like a torment, without any sense of accomplishment, and he will be a little rusty. On the sea. Wow, wow. Ugh, vomit, I feel so uncomfortable. This is the feeling of seasickness. Editha feels so uncomfortable. A cute little girl who looked like a porcelain doll was holding the side of the boat with little circles in her eyes. The little girl who didn't vomit on the flying magic ship or in the car actually couldn't help but vomited after taking the boat for a period of time. The symptoms would not go away for a while, which made her quite uncomfortable. This is the weight of life. Princess Editha, how are you? Are you okay? Beside her, there was a young and beautiful waiter girl serving her. It's okay. Edisha is very brave. Seasickness is nothing. Edisha is not afraid. Editha struggled up from the side of the boat and then struck a brave pose. Then she looked at Edisha in the distance, her exquisite, glass-clear eyes lighting up. Hey, look over there, is there a big ship coming? Wow, it's so big, and it has a lot of gun barrels. Editha was surprised when she saw the approaching ship. It was such a big warship. Cannon barrel? It's a warship? No, Princess Editha, Let's get back to the ship quickly. This warship may have bad intentions. The face of the waiter girl who was serving Edisha changed wildly. She quickly took Edisha's little hand and asked her to return to the inside of the cruise ship. Editha seemed to know who was coming, but she let the waiter hold her hand and walk back to the depths of the ship. Not long after, a clear female voice came from inside the approaching battleship. This is the Shinkuro Kingdom warship. I have been ordered to come to greet the adults on board. I also ask you to show up. The approaching battleship is more like a battleship than an aircraft carrier on Earth. It is more than 200 and nearly 300 meters long. It is a huge thing on the sea. It is bigger than the luxury cruise ship that Edissa bought. One level bigger. The one who spoke was the heroic female secretary who stood proudly on the bow of the warship. Although her strength was nothing in front of Jia Yan, in fact she had a strength of about Earth level. Black Country is definitely considered to be the elite among the elites, and in terms of age, she is definitely the best. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2571. Come to Cheateon.com to subscribe. Otherwise, he would not be able to achieve the status of secretary next to Jia Yan. So when she stood on the bow of the ship and spoke, her voice could spread throughout the sea, making the people on the luxury cruise ship hear her clearly. As Jia Yan's right-hand man, she always thought that she should be the most suitable for Jia Yan's secretary position, but this time she was sent away by Jia Yan and asked to do a pickup task. She analyzed 2 points, or this person is so important that Jia Yan needs to send his secretary to greet him. Another point is that Jia Yan doesn't think she can be very helpful, at least not as much as the person he wants to meet. This time, the secretary girl felt a little unhappy. She wanted to see if the so-called mysterious person was more important than herself. And she was also sure that the people on this boat were the so-called guests of Mr. Jia Yan, because Mr. Jia Yan said that she should be able to recognize who the guests are immediately after getting out of the sea, and on this sea, there are such large and expensive cars. People coming from the cruise ship are definitely very eye-catching. At least she immediately recognized that the people on the cruise ship should be the guests that Mr. Jia Yan is looking for. She stared at the cruise ship and saw the warship with intense eyes at this time, and the panicked crowd wanted to find someone different, the marshal's guest, who should be that person. Huh? Cruise ship owner? No, they don't look like the person I'm looking for. Is it wrong? As a powerful person, this secretary also had extremely formidable eyesight. Anyway, in such a short period of time, she could tell that the man and woman who were being supported by everyone on the side of the ship were not high-level people. That's right, not only could she feel that this couple like man and woman had no strength, but she could also see that they didn't look like big shots. Maybe it's a small wealthy family, but it can't match the level of being valued by Marshal Jia Yan. The secretary was confused. Could it be that she really made a mistake? But in this vast sea area, the sudden arrival of the cruise ship from the other side of the planet is more eye-catching. Marshal Yan has said that when she comes to the sea area, she should recognize who is the visitor at first sight. If a person of this style is not the visitor that Marshal Yan said, who is it? Marshal Yan was definitely not wrong, he must have made the mistake himself. The secretary looked ugly, thinking that she might have misunderstood Marshal Yan's meaning. To her, this was a dereliction of duty on her part, and she would be punished later. At this moment, the 2 men and women under the crowd of supporters also had a look of fear similar to that of the other crew members around them. After all, they are ordinary people. How could ordinary people feel so magical when they see that the ship they are on is surrounded by a large warship that is far larger than their cruise ship? At this moment, both sides suddenly felt a sense of calm before the storm, as if there would be a battle in the next few moments. Of course, there is no chance of a battle. The navy of Nobue Kingdom is not so ferocious as to attack civilians. It even has a pretty good reputation in many newly ruled countries. Both sides just don't know how to continue talking. The secretary thought that he had mistaken the wrong person, but on the cruise ship, everyone thought that the master on the warship had mistaken the wrong person. If the reply did not satisfy the other party, they might become angry. The eerie silence didn't last long. "Wei. Hello, are you sent by Master Jiayan?" After both sides calmed down for about 30 seconds, a milky sound with magical power resounded between the two ships. "Huh," the secretary looked up. Then she was startled, because she discovered that the owner who spoke was a little girl who had climbed to the upper level of the cruise ship, with her little head sticking out from the lever. This girl is only 5 or 6 years old, but she has just unleashed earth-shattering magical power. As a capable secretary, she is no stranger to magical energy. This child? Magic genius? Wrong. Her expression, her demeanor, and her light and airy feeling. Why, a bit like Marshal Jiayan. Is there something wrong with my eyes? The secretary only wondered if there was something wrong with her mind. You must know that Marshal Yan's unique temperament is just like his unique behavior. In the opinion of the secretary, he is the only one in the world. But now, something similar has been discovered on the little girl. How could she accept this? Marshal Jiayan should be the most unique talent in the world. But suddenly, she began to chew on what the little girl said. Lord Jiayan? Does she know Marshal Jiayan? Or, could it be? An idea that the secretary couldn't believe swirled in her mind. Could it be that this is what Marshal Yan calls a guest? Oh my God, Marshal Yan asked me to find not those two couples, but the 5 or 6-year-old loli who was naughtily crawling next to the lever in front of me. Xiu's scalp is numb. The secretary didn't know what words to use to sum up this experience. Ahem, I followed Marshal Yan's order and came to look for Marshal Yan's guest, but I don't know if it is you. Please verify your identity. The secretary suppressed his inner shock, regained his calm expression, and spoke businesslike. He, there is no need to verify it. Just tell Marshal Yan that Adisha is here and he will understand. Aditha was talking and climbing up and down on the lever, like a naughty little monkey. You. Behind her, her younger brother was drooling and trying to climb the lever. Seeing the two siblings starting to play, the secretary wordlessly took out the communicator and didn't know what secret number he dialed. Less than 2 minutes later, she raised her head in disbelief. This, Lady Edisha, Marshal Yan said that you are his guest. Well, please come with us. I believe there is a military port of the Black Country over there. Okay. You can come over to my boat and play. It's fun here. Adisha started to play, waving and dancing with her brother, responding indifferently while playing. There's no need for this. Lady Edisha can just play by herself. I wish you a happy time. The secretary could hardly stand it anymore. He felt that he had brought a group of soldiers, and for the sake of ostentation, he had launched the most powerful warship in the Black Country. However, he did not expect that he would be greeted by such a young little girl. A child of 5 or 6 years old. When she was 5 or 6 years old, she didn't know how to remember things. What's the use of such a guest, not to mention how she met Marshal Yan, but only to say that she was received in such a grand ceremony. Even if she is the daughter of a high-ranking official in the Overlord country, and she is treated as a guest and worshipped as a god by the Black Kingdom, it will not improve the relationship between the two countries. Speechless. When I arrived, I was excited and full of expectations. I didn't know what kind of character Marshal Yan's guest was. But on the way home, the secretary felt a little disinterested. She felt that she was really left out by Marshal Yan. She was assigned the task of picking up a kid like this because he had really lost interest in her. Otherwise, Why would she be doing such a simple task at such a disadvantage? And they did so many tricks with great fanfare. Do you really want to act like the last secretary and show off in front of Marshal Jiayan? This doesn't suit her style. Besides, she wasn't that kind of person in Marshal Yan's mind before, right? Is it time to change now? In short, the little secretary was confused again and panicked. But the warship here was incomprehensible, and the cruise ship on the other end was in a state of panic. Everyone was a little distracted, even Edissa's parents were completely stunned. Edisha, what's going on? Didn't you say you came here to treat your mother? Why did the so-called Marshal Iwa send someone to pick us up when we arrived in Xinhe country? By the way, this Iwa the Marshal can't be the one who has caused a lot of public opinion in the whole world recently. If it is this person, our family will be nothing in the eyes of others. Edisha's father still had some knowledge about the situation. After learning that the battleship that came to greet them was actually the Shinkuro Kingdom, which had recently attracted great attention in the international community and had achieved unprecedented results. When he saw the army's battleship, he was already dumbfounded. And then, when he found out that the battleship that greeted them was actually Marshal Iwa of the Black Kingdom, who was known as an invincible man, and personally issued the order, he was even more shocked and doubtful about his life. Is this your daughter you are welcoming? My daughter said she had a friend here, but no one expected that he was such a big shot. This is completely different from the fact that my daughter has made billions of dollars. Although she has mastered such a large amount of funds and invested it in the Xinhe Kingdom, she will definitely make the Xinhe Kingdom be grateful, but it is absolutely impossible to attract Marshal Yan from the Xinhe Kingdom. Well, that's the person who dares to go to war with the overlord country. Ha ha ha, Mom and Dad, Edisha said she knows someone from the Xinyi Kingdom. This Marshal Yan is someone Edisha knows. From now on, Edisha will stay by Marshal Yan's side to help him fight. What? What are you talking about? Let alone whether you have such ability, do people believe that the Marshal of the Black Country can want you? He is a man of great influence in the world. Edisha's father said dumbfounded. His first thought was not to doubt his daughter's ability, but to feel that her daughter was a bit shady. Such a little kid over 5 years old could not attract people to trust the Marshal of the Black Country. You must know that their family is currently, even if he has some money, compared with Marshal Nobue who can destroy many countries with a wave of his hand, he is nothing more than an ant. Yes. Master Jiayan, sir, he is my old friend. With Edisha by his side, he can help you a lot. Edisha will become very powerful in the future, and my parents will be better in the future, you know. Edisha was sitting on the wooden horse with her brother, swaying her little feet, looking innocent and cute, but she couldn't seem to connect with the person who was valued by Marshal Yan. No matter what Edisha's family thought, the cruise ship was still heading steadily towards the port of Xinyi Kingdom under the guidance of the Xinyi Kingdom warship. The surrounding foreign maritime defense forces, which were originally defending the overlord country that had intercepted a first island chain from Nobue country, could only watch these ships leave. They are not ready to start a war with Xinhe country now. So finally, the luxury cruise ship that Edissa and her family were on arrived at the military port of Xinhe Kingdom near the sea area. Arriving here also means that Edisha has finally approached the Xinhe Kingdom where Jia Yan works, and that their family is safe. Wow, there it is. To woo. The two little kids stepped off the boat and jumped excitedly. Not to mention, the experience on the boat made Brother Edisha's walking much more stable. At least he could run around now that he was supposed to be hugged. Let's go see Master Jia Yan. Take me there quickly. Editha was furious. Well, Lady Edisha, Lord Jia Yan is still hundreds of kilometers away from here. You may need to take a car to see Marshal Jia Yan tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Oh well. Under the persuasion of her secretary, Edisha had to give up the idea of meeting Jia Yan right away, and she was actually thinking, a few hundred kilometers is nothing, when the palace she controls is tens of thousands of kilometers away. For existences like Edisha and Jiayan, after entering this kind of world, the most difficult part is not how to compete for energy, but after changing into a body, it will become difficult to accept the quantification units around it. A unit distance of several hundred kilometers. When Edisha controlled a palace or a planet, she could travel hundreds of thousands or millions of kilometers in 1 second. But now she has to go several days without seeing the top because of these hundreds of kilometers. This was the first time that Edisha experienced the sense of gap and unreality. Fortunately, the whole process was quite smooth. When he arrived in the Xinhe country, it could be said to be Jiayan's Yantang place. Since he wanted to welcome this little girl's family from the other side of the planet, there was no resistance. How big of a deal is this? Is this, Xinhaiguo? Arriving at the port, Edissa's parents, her 2 little brothers, and the 2 guards who had sworn to follow Edissa did not dare to express their anger. The entire military port was in a state of turmoil, with the style and state of the soldiers everywhere. Everyone has become accustomed to the style of believing in the Black Country. Even the people's attitude towards soldiers is like seeing their own children. After all, almost half of the citizens are now directly or indirectly serving the war. The entire country came to power from Jiayan. After that, it has rapidly transformed into a militarized country. Such a strong atmosphere of war caused all the guests on the cruise ship to remain silent. Only Edisha is different. This car is for military use, but it can change the structure of the rear row, which will effectively enhance the overall defense. The wheels and hubs can also be changed. If you do what I say, you will get all-round performance. Improve. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2572. As Edisha walked in the car, she gave instructions on all aspects of the affairs she saw. The secretary was by her side, listening to her insights and knowledge in a daze. You know, if these words were spoken by an older soldier or technician, there would be absolutely no problem, but when these words are spoken by a 5 or 6-year-old child, it is absolutely unbelievable. This kid is really talking nonsense. He didn't even tell the professionals, but you keep talking. Edisha's father, who was accompanying the tour, immediately said something to Edisha without seeming to blame him after the chief engineer in the car looked grim. No, sir, what you said is accurate. There are even many aspects that we have not thought of. We hope that we can continue to get her guidance in the future. For us, having her guidance will definitely reduce a lot of work quantity. The chief engineer refused to agree and responded with a sigh. All of Edissa's knowledge and insights come from aliens, and the amount of knowledge in aliens is much richer and more reasonable than the knowledge in this region. Therefore, at first glance, as long as they are professionals, everyone knows they are smarter than themselves. Humph, of course what Edisha said is the best. I will give you some guidance in the future. Edisha proudly puffed up her small chest, looking extremely proud. The face of Edissa's father was flushed. He couldn't understand whether what Edissa said was right or not, but now the people around him were looking at him with half-smiling smiles, making him want to find a hole in the ground to crawl into. Ms. Edisha, let's take you two to today's resting place. Your lady and the young master are waiting there. As long as we are well prepared, we can set off to find Marshal Jiayan tomorrow. Okay, go back quickly. I don't want to see these boring things anymore. I want to go to Master Jiayan. When Edisha heard the words Jiayan, her eyes lit up. She missed Jiayan after being apart for so many days, and she also thought that Jia Yan would definitely have a more amusing expression when he saw her current appearance. The two of them followed the secretary's guidance and returned to the hotel where they were temporarily staying today. Then they did not mention how Edissa played with her younger brother, nor did they mention that Edissa's parents were not thinking about tea and food in the guest room, thinking about why their daughter was just 5-year-old. At the age of only 3 years old, you can get to know a big shot like Jia Yan. I just said that the four of them were prepared. Oh no, the baby was not prepared. In short, he was also used to traveling and saw a lot of things with his parents. So I didn't cry or make trouble during this process, it was quite quiet. In a blink of an eye, the next day came. A speed car with adequate security measures parked on the top floor of the hotel where Edisha and the others were staying. It was quite eye-catching early in the morning. Get in the car. It's such a small car, but is it fast? Yes, Lord Edisha, Marshal Jia Yan is very happy to know that you are coming. Originally, this cutting-edge magic flying car was the Marshal's own car, and he sent it out to greet you. The secretary was beside Edissa, looking somewhat respectful. As a secretary who has been following Marshal Jia Yan for some time, she knows that Jia Yan is very protective of this flying car. Although he doesn't say it, he does not let anyone else sit in it whenever something happens, and only allows him to sit on it himself. It can be seen how much he cares for the car. But this time, after hearing about the arrival of Edisha and her family, he sent this flying car to greet him, even abandoning his own philosophy of not lending out anything. This shows that he has no regard for the 5-year-old Edisha. What a lovely little genius girl. Could it be that Marshal Jia Yan already knew this young genius before? The secretary's change in attitude toward Edisha was naturally because Edissa received great attention from Jia Yan, and through this day's observation, she also discovered that Edisha, a little genius, was not only capable of magic at this age. What's even more exaggerated is that her knowledge is all-encompassing, she understands everything, and she seems to be quite experienced in everything. This made her vaguely understand why her own Marshal Yan valued this 5-year-old girl so much. Yes, Marshal Jia Yan doesn't know my physical appearance and personal information, right? After getting in the car, Edisha sat on the chair and suddenly turned around and asked. Yes, I don't know why, but Marshal Jia Yan didn't even ask this. It seems that he just needs you to come over, miss. He. That's not the case. Marshal Jia Yan just wants me to come over. He doesn't care about anything else, but, he. Edisha covered her little mouth and laughed. She wanted to know if Master Jia Yan would be frightened when he saw her current cute appearance, and would he praise himself for being cute. As she was thinking about it, Edisha started humming random songs in her seat. As a living body, it is indeed much more interesting than the previous intelligent brain. Her feelings and various emotions will make her have colorful thoughts. This is different from when she becomes an intelligent brain, although she will also have various neurons. Information is being transmitted, but it is all logical and systematic, which is completely different. It's much more interesting now. No wonder I couldn't simulate the emotions of life before. It turns out that emotions are like this. Edisha hummed a song and watched the speeding car take off like lightning, and then headed towards the capital of Xinyi country like lightning. They got on the magic speed car specially sent by Jia Yan, and the speed was much faster, at least shortening the distance by about 80%. In other words, the destination that would have taken 2 or 3 days to arrive would be reached this evening. And within the capital of Xinhai country. Jia Yan was actually busy with a lot of things, and he had no time to care whether Edisha was coming. Although this little Ji now is here, it will definitely be of some help to the war he launches, but for Jia Yan now, there is not much difference in this kind of war with or without Edisha. He can just play it by himself. Can destroy this planet. He himself had some expectations. What would Edisha be reborn into? If it was a human life, it must be the character he wanted to be. Marshal Jiayan, the initial countermeasures and strategic strategies for dealing with these major countries have been written down. Please take a look and give your guidance. I was just thinking about Adisha, but unexpectedly I was interrupted by the people around me. What he is busy with now is dealing with several major national issues that he will fight next. He has already set the goal of annihilating the next country, but this process is definitely not much easier than destroying the 12 major countries. Although for Jiayan, after taking control of all aspects of the Xinhe kingdom, the matter should be easier. A lot of talent, but he wasn't as relaxed as he imagined. After all, on the bright side, the enemies Nobue country will face next are getting stronger and stronger step by step. So he at least made a show of it, came to the staff room, and followed a large group of staff officers to summarize the next war. It's said to be a summary, but it's actually what he said. He pointed out some mistakes in the strategy in one breath, and then introduced some new plans of his own. In the end, everyone discussed it for a long time. Looking back, all these plans were, Marshal Yan proposed it alone. When I came here, I had extremely strong confidence in Marshal Yan and a vague desire to express myself in front of him. But I turned around and closed the door of the staff room. The staff officers who walked out were all discouraged. Yes, because they realized that this meeting was probably just a waste of time for Marshal Yan. He alone was enough to finalize everything. Fortunately, what they learned from Jia Yan was enough to keep them happy for a long time. It's boring. I won't come to such a meeting next time. Marshal Yan is right, your time is precious, and it is a complete waste of your time to come to a meeting like ours. Beside Jia Yan, the chief of staff said helplessly and respectfully in a low voice. Whether it's a man or a ghost, it's enough to look at their true abilities. At least Jia Yan's ability to plan wars is far superior to them. It's just that he has no plans left. Every plan is accurate to the decimal point, which makes everyone present. Every staff member was deeply hit and felt that their previous life was in vain. Jia Yan walked out of the staff headquarters, followed by several muscular guards. Then he received an incoming call. Oh? Is Adisha here already? Very good, I'll go pick her up. Jia Yan paused, then listened to the news coming on the other end of the phone, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Then he got in the car and asked the guards to drive the car directly to the capital airport. The guards almost thought they heard wrongly. You must know that during the rise of Marshal Yan, he has never been so friendly to anyone. Even if the Grand Marshal personally went to the area where Marshal Yan was to visit several times, Marshal Yan never greeted him in person, let alone several other big figures in the country. Well, those people did not use their status to greet Marshal Yan earlier. By the time they reacted, Marshal Yan's status had risen to the number one person in the country. But today, Marshal Yan, who never greeted anyone, actually had the idea of greeting others. Who is here? Could it be some big shot? The guards didn't dare to ask. They could only suppress their doubts and obey Jia Yan's orders. Moreover, they will definitely be able to see the person Jia Yan is about to greet. Then they will know whether he is a big shot with 3 heads and 6 arms. We can't guarantee whether it's a big shot or not. But the person coming is definitely not an adult. She's a tiny little brat. Wow, Lord Jia Yan, sir, I finally see you. Adisha misses you so much. When Jia Yan's car arrived at the airport, all the passengers and a large number of irrelevant people had been cleared out, leaving only an empty apron with a flying car that had just landed. And soon a little kid jumped out of the flying car. The little one ran towards Jia Yan and hugged his thigh. Well. Jia Yan was startled. Adisha. The cute little girl raised her head, nodded vigorously, and smiled with innocent eyes. Yes, Adisha, master, is Adisha cute now? This is how it feels to become a human. Yeah, it's fun. A pair of big hands rubbed the little girl's head, doting on her messy hair and twisting it into a ball. You little guy, I should have thought that you would become a little girl. Your personality is like a little girl, haha. Wow, master, you are so amazing, you can think of what Edissa is thinking. Edissa was shocked. You must know that she used to be a smart brain, and her calculation power per second was as high as the sky. This great master can actually think of what she thinks, which shows that the master is too smart. Character, do you understand? It turns out that you don't understand Editha. In short, people have personalities. Even your brains have a little bit of personality. Well, I have nothing to be dissatisfied with you being reborn like this. Come with me now, Ed. Are those in the car your current relatives? Jia Yan had no choice but to put down his hand and let him follow him to the marshal's mansion. However, he found that there were several other figures looking at him eagerly and nervously in the car. Adisha casually glanced at the family members who had followed her across the distance, and then nodded nonchalantly. Well, yes, these are Adisha's current family members, but the master is here, so Adisha doesn't want them. That's it, let's go back. With a bang, Jia Yan flicked the little's Hineo on the forehead. The flick made Edisha's forehead turn red and her eyes welled up with tears. What are you talking about? Regardless of whether you are reborn into this world or not, since they are your family now, you must treat them well. Okay, arrange these family members, and then it will be fine if you go to my place, right? Does it seem that one of your family members is ill? Jia Yan's eyes are very vicious. It was obvious at a glance that there was something wrong with Edisha's mother. Edisha choked and choked. She felt that she was afraid of pain. She rubbed her sore forehead and sobbed for a long time. Then she sniffed, nodded, and said, yes, yes, Edisha's mother has a body that's not good. Edisha, take her to see a doctor. Hey, you still understand this? It seems that you are indeed a bit like a serious human being, but you don't have to go to see a doctor. Master, please help you. Jia Yan shook his head and aimed at the car body here. A force similar to that of a cultivator was launched and poured into Edisha's mother's body. Edisha's mother felt herself trembled all over, and then her face suddenly turned rosy. Okay, I'll go back first. You make arrangements for your family, and then I'll give you a letter of appointment. You can come to work at the marshal's mansion. Remember, since we are family members, you must treat them well unless you give up this part of your life. Jia Yan waved his hand, got in the car and left the tarmac. Master doesn't want to love Disha anymore, ugh. Editha wanted to cry again. She walked to the speeding car a little lonely. At this time, her father in the car was already very nervous looking at her mother who was acting uncharacteristically. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 2573. There's no need to look at it, Lord Jia Yan, Your Excellency cured my mother's illness. Mom, you don't have to worry about your serious illness in the future. This is all thanks to Edisha. Edisha puffed up her small breasts, and didn't notice that there was a small swollen bud on her forehead, and there were some tears hanging from the corners of her eyes. Cure, is it cured? The two parents were panicked and couldn't believe it. Just by looking away from afar, that young man who didn't even look like he was 20 years old, cured a seriously ill patient who had been seriously ill for so long and had been unable to find any solution after seeking medical treatment. Why don't you believe it? But I really feel better physically, and the symptoms I've been having are gone. With a rosy face, Edisha's mother got out of the car, walked a few steps, and then suddenly started running and jumping, showing off her good figure. It's really good, it's really good, it's great. Edisha, my dear, I can take care of you again in the future. While running, Edisha's mother also shed tears. I've told you, but I still don't believe it. Master Jia is omnipotent. Although Adisha said this, the tears hanging from the corners of her eyes were even more obvious. The master must have played Adisha too hard, it hurt so much. It must have been the pain from the master just now, otherwise I would have cried. Adisha is not a child who can cry. Adisha is already so many years old. She rubbed her little nose, tears rolling down her face. No matter what, this former little Hineo seems to understand a little more about the emotions of life. But Hineo is Hineo. Even though she has just been reborn as a living being, she has been as Hineo for much longer than this child. So in the early morning of the next day, Jia heard the sound of milk that was heard every day in the outside world and was also feared by the outside world, and the small light and shadow of mosquitoes. Master, here is Adita, what are your orders? Looking at the little girl running around like crazy next to the desk, Jia rubbed his forehead. Although he has been reborn as a human being, he still feels like the light and shadow mosquito he once was. Adisha, come here and help me sort the files, and then tell me, by the way, what abilities you have now. It's impossible for you to still have so much memory and knowledge. He pointed to the pile of papers beside him. Yeah. Aditha will sort it out. Adisha ran to the pile of papers and began to sort them out. Jia lowered his head and glanced at her, and found that the little girl was crazy and would still be tired when running. After shouting like crazy for a while, beads of sweat were already forming on her forehead. It seems that this is quite good, at least it is not like the light and shadow mosquitoes in the past, which consumes energy and can fly everywhere for days and nights. Now it has to rest when it is tired. Thinking about it this way, Jia felt that it was beneficial to satisfy this little Hineo's dream and turn her into a living being. Otherwise, who could bear it if she continued to be so crazy? Master, Adisha is a child now. Although she still has a lot of memory, it is far behind the age of the brain. But compared to most people in this world, Adisha, she is smarter than them in every aspect, and Adisha is a smart little helper. Aditha was sorting out the documents and clenched her fists in excitement. Obviously Jia didn't tell her how to organize it, but she was able to organize it into the way Jia was most accustomed to. This is the tacit understanding of nearly 100 years. That's really cool. Yes, Adisha is amazing. I'm just complimenting you. Yeah, the master praised Adisha. Adisha is very happy. Actually, there is a tacit understanding, but even now, Jia is still not used to this little Hineo's way of speaking. Cute and indeed cute, he also felt that he was used to the existence of this little guy. Without her, I am afraid that his cultivation life, oh no, mosquito life, would become uninteresting. But why the hell do you want to talk so much? Adisha, let me tell you. What does the master have to say? Listen to Adisha. Adisha became excited for a moment, put down the documents she was organizing, and jumped up to Jia, listening attentively. You have chosen to become the life form of a little girl, right? Since you are a girl, you must look like a girl. Girls are reserved and quite quiet. Just as Jia was about to educate this little kid's Hineo, Adisha retorted dissatisfied. Master is wrong. There is data in Aditha's database. Human women are not much more restrained than men when they are young. There is no such thing as reserve. No, I say girls should be more reserved and talk less. In that case, Adisha is no longer Adisha. Master, don't you want Adisha? Then Adisha doesn't want this life form either. I'm going to die. Seeing Aditha burst into tears and snot rolling out of her nose, and about to run away, Jia stopped her dumbfounded. No, that's not what you meant. I just said that if you become a human and grow up in the future, the big girl won't be as lively as you, okay? Then Adisha will never grow up, she will always be 5 years old. Adisha puffed out her chest. Don't mention it, if other children say this, it is just a child's naughty language, but when it comes to Edisha, this statement is not false at all. She has the ability to modify some of her own things to become something that cannot be done. Grow up and stay 5 years old forever. After all, when she was a smart brain in this world, she also subtly participated in the design and modification. Even the rules were created by herself. How could she not be able to do this simple thing of always maintaining a youthful youth? Okay, whatever you want. Jia Yan was really helpless, and told Aidisha that she would always remain 5 years old, and acquiesced. Because subconsciously, he still recognized the feeling that Edissa was a little cutie. If 10 or 20 years later, she suddenly transformed into some kind of beauty, it would be impossible no matter how uncomfortable she looked in the palace. Habit. This kind of naughty kid is more fun. Let's do as Edissa does. Well, Edisha has poop, Edisha can poop, poop, Edisha. Edisha went back to sorting out the files and casually sang the poop song she had composed on the spur of the moment. If it were the former Edisha, although she was extremely naughty, she would not do such things that only children would do. At this time, she was really like a nascent stage of life, very naughty. Jia Yan was extremely embarrassed. Just sing it, at least make up something nicer. What does poop song mean? That's right. She may have experienced a lot of things after becoming a human girl. She has definitely experienced this poop. It seems reasonable to sing out her feelings. What's reasonable? I was almost brainwashed by her. Jia Yan shook his head, and then thought that this little Edisha should immediately learn the cultivation methods of this world, such as cultivation and so on. She can live without food and do not need to eat or poop. This will at least avoid some embarrassing moments. Why is she reborn as a little girl? She's cute, but she still feels a little weird, ugh. Although Jia Yan has been feeling unaccustomed to this day, he has gradually begun to enjoy the help of Edisha's pre-intelligent brain again. As the reincarnation of the intelligent brain, and she actually still has a large amount of intelligent brain memory to calculate, the efficiency of doing things is really extremely high. Lord, Marshal, how could you do this? I didn't plan well here. If it happened on the battlefield, it might cause more than 10 casualties on our side. Editha will help you make up for it? It's really so careless. Edisha's voice in the office made several staff officers who came to help not far away look dumbfounded. They are several talented staff officers from the General Staff Headquarters. Although each of them does not have a lot of experience, they have a strong talent for memory, so they were invited to help Jia Yan process the documents that Edissa quickly completed. It's not that they are required to do anything, they just need to sort each processed file into categories. The two staff officers were already frightened. You know, in the past 2 days, I heard that Marshal Jia Yan actually invited some kind of genius prodigy from the other side of the planet to help him. Privately, all the staff and officials who knew about it were a little weird. It's not that prodigies can't give the green light. For example, several staff officers present have been regarded as prodigies since they were young and entered the staff headquarters. But when these people were young prodigies and entered the staff headquarters, they were still youth prodigies after all. This prodigy who was invited by Marshal Jia Yan himself was a real child. Only 5 years old. The average 5-year-old child is still squatting on the ground and playing in the mud. It would be better for you to directly invite him to the office to process documents. Isn't this a joke? Although no one would say anything distrustful of Marshal Jia Yan, a big shot, to his face, many people believed that Jia Yan must have made a wrong decision this time. Maybe it would be wrong to let a kid handle the documents. If you get it wrong, you will end up losing the battle. This is something that affects the lives of countless soldiers. But today, Jia Yan specially asked several staff members to come to help, and little Edisha's performance shocked them. She is no longer a prodigy to explain. I can omit the word Tong and just think of it as God, okay. Even Marshal Jia Yan, who was old in the eyes of these staff officers, extremely rigorous in his actions, and rarely made mistakes, was pointed at by this little prodigy Adisha and said that he was rough in his work. My mother. These staff geniuses, who had been regarded as prodigies before, looked at each other, and then became extremely bitter. If you and others can also be regarded as child prodigies, then Ms. Adisha is not just a child prodigy, she is completely a great god among child prodigies, okay. They had to compare, and they were embarrassed to say that they were child prodigies, because together they couldn't even sort out the documents that Aditya had processed. At this speed, Adisha was obviously playing with the doll while working with the other hand, otherwise they would not be able to catch up with Adisha. What kind of monster is this? No wonder Marshal Jia Yan personally went to the airport to greet him, and received him into his office the next day to become his right-hand man. With this ability, I am afraid it will shock the whole world if it is revealed. He is indeed Jia Yan. The Marshal actually rushed ahead of everyone and brought this kind of prodigy home. With Lady Adisha, I'm afraid the war power of the Black Kingdom will be doubled. A chief of staff looked at Adisha, who had a cute little face, mumbled, and sang the self-composed song I Have a Little Poop. He felt that Adisha's appearance was not because of how talented she was. She is great, but Marshal Jia Yan is great. Otherwise, even if she is great, without someone like Marshal Jia Yan, how could she be so reused? I have a little poop, little poop, little poop, I have a little poop, little poop. Adisha can enjoy her current life. She has a small table and draws on the paper like graffiti. Sometimes she writes the words in the shape of poop, and sometimes she writes the words in the shape of animals. The staff officers walking around are not as happy as she is. His anxious face was covered with sweat. In addition, further away, there was directly her owner Jia Yan. This was the first time she saw her owner from such a perspective. He was not a big mosquito, but an owner who looked like an earthling. He looked a bit handsome. Her two chubby little legs were swinging back and forth on the stool, and her baby fat face burst into laughter from time to time. Such a casual attitude made the staff around him look bitter, because in addition to sorting out Adisha's documents, they also had to check whether there were any errors. This was a necessary process. Because no matter which one of these documents it is, it may cause huge problems in the entire war. Just because they needed to verify it, they couldn't keep up. Wait, you guys, don't be lazy. Adisha tells you that these are all things that will be used in the new battle. If you make a mistake, Adisha will spank you. Aditya pointed fiercely at a staff officer whose cheeks were red from exhaustion, and her little eyebrows stood up. Okay, I won't be lazy. Thank you, Lady Adisha, for correcting me. The staff officer nodded with a wry smile. Jia Yan, on the other hand, picked up his favorite tea beside his desk and watched the scene calmly. With Adisha, his work suddenly became scattered, because he believed in Adisha more than he believed in himself. At least when it came to work such as processing documents, he might not even be able to keep up with what he is doing now. This state of Adisha, not to mention, if Adisha goes to the outside world and masters the original Adisha computer, it will directly have the highest processing speed in the entire galaxy. So he became quite leisurely, and even if he was so leisurely, the speed of the entire battle plan would not lag at all, and would even become faster. With a brain like Adisha, he doesn't have to deploy his troops. Even some plans that require some tactics and don't involve excessive influence can be thrown to Adisha, and she will pass them through her memory. Those battles and strategies that exist are designed to be more reasonable. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2574. Although it is not as good as Jia Yan's plan based on his own strong ideas, to people in this world, these are all novel tactics, some are extremely rigorous, and may even be more effective than Jia Yan's tactics. Be better. So, within 3 days, Edisha, the new little staff officer, was recommended by Jia Yan for the first time, and then the superiors directly appointed her as the chief of staff of the Xinhe army. What the chief of staff meant was that Edisha directly became the brains of the entire Xinhe army. Reaching this position in 3 days is probably comparable to the speed at which Jia Yan became deputy marshal of the frontline army on his first day. But because she was personally recommended by Jia Yan, and because Jia Yan's status in the Xinhe kingdom is almost the same as the one she speaks for, she is still different from the Jia Yan who worked hard on her own. Edisha, you, became the chief of staff of the Xinyi kingdom? This. On the day of her appointment, Edisha deliberately got into her secretary's car, followed by several experts specially sent by the Xinyi kingdom to protect the chief of staff, and returned home to celebrate. And her parents, who were also placed in a high-end residential area in the capital of Nobue country, were shocked by the news. You must know that the troops of Xinhe Kingdom have become overwhelmingly eye-catching on the entire planet recently. In every battle and war, the marshal of this country can perform magical tricks, and he always uses his own side as the smallest victory was achieved at the cost of casualties. In such a legendary country, they really didn't believe that their 5-year-old daughter could achieve such a status just after arriving. You know, this is just a child, and the parents still remember that she wet the bed a year ago. They didn't expect that the child in their eyes would actually be appointed as the chief of staff of such a militarized country just a few days after leaving them. You know, there are vague rumors from the outside world that the chief of staff is in the military. His status is only a little lower than that of some military figures, such as Marshal Jia Yan and Grand Marshal. Others who want to talk to the chief of staff cannot use their official titles. Well, Edisha is the chief of staff. Ha ha ha, Mom and Dad, aren't you happy? I'm happy. I'm so happy that I'm a little scared. Don't be afraid. Edisha is the chief of staff. Whoever makes Mom and Dad unhappy, I will make them unhappy. Edisha is awesome. Yes, you are amazing. I want to play with my brother. Please get him up quickly and play with me. If he doesn't get up, I will cry. When they saw that the newly appointed chief of staff, who was so majestic and dignified, turned his mouth flat and wanted to cry and act coquettishly because he could not play with his younger brother, the two couples were speechless and smiled knowingly. No matter what, this magical naughty child like a child prodigy is definitely my daughter. The one who wet the bed last year. Say, Edisha, could you stop being so childish? The next day, Edisha finally came up with a stack of battle plans and was jumping around in Jia Yan's office excitedly. Jia Yan finally couldn't help it and made a request to her. But Edisha is just a child. Children can't be childish. Edisha doesn't understand. Editha's attitude changed 180 degrees, and she immediately became on the verge of tears. Jia Yan stroked his forehead helplessly and nodded for her to continue. Then the little one started jumping and jumping again as if trying to die. After a while, he got tired and lay on his stomach, screaming. Editha's temperament has been maintained since her childhood, but after becoming a child, it seems that her mischievous and naughty attributes have become more serious. Of course, in the intellectual brain period, it was because she had a lot of data and limitations, but now she has become a real life, derived from the unique perspective of life, and she is indeed a child. Under the stimulation of the unique growth hormones in children, it's only natural that he likes to make a fuss like an ordinary bear. Marshal Jia Yan, the order to start the battle is about to begin. You go and give the order. Edisha needs to rest. Editha lay facelessly on the big sofa, letting Jia Yan direct the battle. That's right, the new battle plan she formulated is about to begin. This war was started by Jia Yan before Edisha came. Moreover, the battle to be launched involved several established continental powers, and the other subordinates were actually quite opposed to it. After the lovely Disha arrived, with a wave of her little hand, she drew up a reliable battle plan one by one, and there were multiple copies of each plan, explaining how to deal with any kind of unexpected information. These responsible people, when the troops go to war, they only need to follow the instructions, and they can generally implement the war plan, and it is unlikely that there will be any surprises. After all, Jia Yan is personally responsible for the key points of this battle. He will conduct remote control at the beginning of the war. Jia Yan nodded, and then wondered whether she was taking the spotlight a little bit. He asked her to help, but after she came to order him. But it doesn't matter, for both myself and Edisha, this war is like children playing in a house. By the way, Edisha, go to the secret room and absorb the power of this world. How much you can absorb depends on your own physique. I don't want you to continue to have this physique. Okay. Edisha waved her little hands feebly, and then dropped her hands to the sofa. She looks like a sad little girl. Jia Yan walked out of the office, and immediately his subordinates put his marshal's cloak on him. Jia Yan didn't care, just nodded, and strode towards the planning room where the operation was carried out. Entering the planning room, there were already a large number of staff officers and planning experts who were conducting operations. Everyone was uneasy, and the battle that followed was a more exaggerated and terrifying war than the many previous wars in the entire Xinyi kingdom. But their uneasy expressions instantly became much smaller after the young Marshal Jia Yan entered the scene. Even though this young man looks only 15 or 16 years old, to the people present, or to the people of the entire Xinhe kingdom, he is like the patron saint of the entire Xinhe kingdom. They will not treat him as just an ordinary young man, but will treat him as the invincible supreme marshal of the entire Shinkuro kingdom. There are still a few minutes left. Are all the troops on the front line ready for combat? The intelligence has not been leaked, right? After Jia Yan entered the room, he asked a few questions. There are still 2 minutes left. The troops are all ready as planned, and the intelligence is okay. No one present has communicated with the outside world. Very well, just wait. Is my tea here? Coming. Everyone is already familiar with Jia Yan's habit. He likes to take a sip of tea when commanding operations, and this habit has also affected many commanders. I even heard that there are so many old and rough generals fighting on the front line. Gradually, they followed the trend and often took a sip of tea in an artful manner during battles. It seemed that if they did this, people would think that they were close to Marshal Yan. Of course, Jia Yan doesn't care about his own habits, whether they have learned them or not. Drinking tea is not his own patent. Before him, there were many high-ranking generals who liked to drink tea. At most, he was just the one who promoted this habit. Zi. Jia Yan took a sip of tea calmly. The surrounding staff officers and command experts all secretly applauded for such a simple move. You must know that they are so nervous that they can't even hold the teacup, but the young marshal is still in such a calm mood, which shows that the marshal really has a groove in his chest. This war should be stable, right? Although he said he was stable, he quite agreed with Jia Yan's calm performance, but deep down in his heart, many people actually still had considerable worries. Because this war is more worrying for them than the last time. Jia Yan's purpose in this war is to fight 7 countries, and these 7 countries are all countries in the border areas that are currently occupied by the Xinhe kingdom, and there are border frictions. Although compared to the previous battle against the 12 countries at the same time, the 7 countries sounded much smaller, but you must know that after occupying the 12 countries, the overall strong strength of the Xinhe kingdom has been recognized by the surrounding countries, large and small. Under such circumstances, one can imagine how powerful the country that dares to provoke the border is. No one in the 7 kingdoms is easy to pinch. No matter how weak they are stronger than the 5 or 6 countries that united. Among them, the Western country is a regional power that has been in tit-for-tat confrontation with the hegemonic country on the world stage for some time. Even though the current Western country is completely different from the overlord country, this does not prevent it from having a brief confrontation with the overlord country for a period of time, and still retains it to this day. It still often makes arrogant remarks against the overlord country, but it is still very strong. Big country. Such a country, let alone a black country, even the hegemonic country would not easily attack it. It is believed that what the Black Kingdom is doing now is to list the Western Kingdom as one of the 7 countries to fight next after destroying the 12 kingdoms. And if the goal of destroying the 7 kingdoms can be achieved, then the Xinhai Kingdom will probably truly squeeze into the status of a world power, and may even directly threaten the status of the hegemonic country, because even if it is a hegemonic country, it will the 7 countries that I believe Black country wants to fight are also quite fearful. 5 4 3 2 1. When the countdown read to 1 second, Jia Yan calmly put down the teacup in his hand and waved his hand gently. Let's start the 7 kingdoms counter-attack war. Execute the 7 nations counter-attack war. First Army on the move. The 12th Reserve Army launches an attack. The 35th Reserve Army engages in flanking combat. The External Publicity Department begins urgent external contact. I believe the Black Kingdom has declared war on the Western Kingdom. I believe the Black Kingdom has declared war on the Iron River Kingdom. On this day, Nobue country, which had already attracted enough attention recently, once again triggered a magnitude 12 earthquake. No, or should be said, it was an earth-shattering magnitude 13 earthquake that rarely occurred in the history of the entire planet. Of course, the earthquake is just a metaphor, but it is quite appropriate to use it as an analogy to what Xinhai did. Because when Xinhai Kingdom had just annexed the 13 kingdoms, many countries believed that this small Xinhai Kingdom definitely needed a certain amount of time to stabilize the territory it had swallowed, and even give some of it away. Regarded as the recent harassment of Xinhai's benefits money under the pretext of returning the refugees' homes. Everyone believes that it is absolutely impossible for Xinhai Kingdom to launch any large-scale war. But what shocked everyone was that not long after the war ended, Nobue country launched another large-scale war. And this war is a war of much greater scale and level than the dozen previous wars to destroy the country. This little country of Xinhai actually declared war on the 7 major powers that were causing trouble on the border. You know, this is a declaration of war. In today's world, many countries have small frictions or even feuds. They are unwilling to declare war on another country casually, because this will have a great impact on the future development of the entire country. Impact. If war is declared, it means that the situation has reached an intolerable level and is quite serious. The credible Black country seemed to have no idea, and declared war as soon as they said it, and this time they declared war against 7 major countries. As soon as this declaration came out, the troops of the Xinhai Kingdom who were already stationed at the border were moved. They launched a crazy counterattack against the troops of the 7 major countries that had harassed them for several days. The entire international community was in an uproar. You must know that these 7 major countries are different from the previous 13 small countries. If they dare to attack Xinhai, which is in full swing, it shows that they have confidence, so any of them are not easy to deal with. Even the one with the smallest territory is as big as the 5 or 6 small countries united before, and the one with the smallest population is as large as the total population of 3 or 4 small countries, and these are countries with hundreds of thousands of people. The entire country it is extremely stable. Compared with the Xinhai Kingdom, which seems to have a vast territory and a large population after annexing the 13 kingdoms, it is more than a little stronger. To put it bluntly, the current Xinhai country is still using its tens of millions of people in Xinhai to fight against 7 countries. Among these 7 countries, the smallest one has hundreds of millions of people, and the largest one has hundreds of millions of people. The largest Western country has a population of more than 500 million. How could the two parties be on the same level? Even if they attack one of the countries, they are currently engaged in continuous wars and have to allocate troops to suppress the newly occupied Nobue kingdom. I am afraid that they will not be able to do it. But they were so arrogant that they directly attacked 7 countries. The whole world was completely shocked by Xin Haiguo's madness and arrogance. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2575. After being stunned, there was overwhelming cynicism. This letter from Haiguo is completely crazy. Do they really think that they are already the most powerful country in the world? This is simply ridiculous. Even the hegemonic country would not dare to easily attack the 7 major countries of this size. How can this black country dare to declare war? I'm looking for death, I'm definitely looking for death. If the Xinhe kingdom can defeat all the 7 major countries this time like they did to the small countries before, I will kneel down and eat. Public opinion in the whole world was in an uproar, and then many military experts and high-level officials from various countries jumped on the screen, like the clown, and began to criticize and accuse Xinhe country as much as possible. You must know that the Xinhe kingdom is not favored by international public opinion. If we talk about the previous Xinhaiguo, many people will be more restrained. After all, no matter how rubbish the Xinhaiguo is, as long as they pretend to be grandsons for a period of time, if the digested resources of the 13 kingdoms are consumed, they might transform themselves into one of the major first-class powers in the entire world. For the sake of the future, countless military scientists and big shots have no confidence in the previous belief in the black country. He has a somewhat serious attitude and will not express his opinions easily. But now, Xinhe kingdom has declared war on the 7 strongest countries around him as if seeking death. No one will tolerate it anymore. Believing that the black country is seeking death like this, its destruction is absolute. They were originally called for beating by everyone in the international community. At this time, they have become a country where even if they are scolded, there will be no consequences. Of course, they are directly scolded as pigheads. As for Xinhe country, it seemed that it had been expected. After the external spokesperson announced the war incident today, he did not pay attention to the reporters from various countries below and left quickly. Other military leaders also refused all visits and directly announced that they would no longer pay attention to these foreign visitors. This saves you from being scolded. Everyone is waiting. After the first wave of Xinhe Kingdom's so-called foreign counterattack war was defeated by the 7 kingdoms, Xinhe Kingdom began to beg for mercy. No one would believe that the military resources were stretched thin. It was said that almost all of the main forces going into the battle were reservists with no actual combat experience. This believed that the black country could still defeat the 7 major powers. They are bound to lose, but they don't know how they will lose. If they lose too badly, maybe the 7 countries will seize the opportunity to counterattack the territories occupied by Xinhe. There is a high probability that Xinhe will take the initiative. Ask to share the land to make amends. By then, I am afraid that Xinhe will directly become the laughing stock of the entire international community. The overlord country will then take the lead and exert greater pressure, allowing the Xinhe kingdom to spit out all the territories it has occupied before and turn them into temporary administration by the surrounding powerful countries, turning this country that has only a very short time of rise into a he might disappear like a meteor. In this way, countless media and public opinion circles are waiting for the news of Xinhe country's failure to be released so that they can write sarcastic articles. But the first frontline war report came, but it disappointed all the media and senior officials of various countries who were waiting to see the black country's scandal. Even more than disappointment, there was a feeling of fear that emerged in the hearts of this group of people. Because of this news, it was the Xinhai kingdom that relied only on its reserve troops. On the first day of the expedition, it defeated the troops of the 7 countries that were causing trouble at the border. You must know that these are the 7 most powerful countries, and they have already deployed millions of troops. The number of soldiers in each country is more than 3 times that of the Xinhai kingdom. In this way, they were still defeated on the first day of the battle. When the result of this battle came out, the whole world was shocked. The whole world felt a vague feeling of fear because of the 7-way victory of the Black Kingdom in this battle. Because even if military experts tried to break their heads, they could not imagine how the Xinhai kingdom's reserve forces and the level of weapons and equipment could defeat 1 against 3. What's more, they still won all 7 of them, without even being defeated all the way. Soon, Xinhai kingdom announced the details of the battle, and once the details were announced, it directly triggered a 7-magnitude earthquake. Yes, it really shocked countless people. This time in the battle between Xinyi kingdom, it seemed that Xinyi kingdom was overwhelmingly defeating the enemy as before. However, after actually reading their battle reports, all the countries discovered that the content of this Xinyi kingdom war was different from the pre-war arrangements. It is much more detailed than before, and there is definitely a conscientious counselor guiding the country behind the scenes. And this person who guided the country was able to cooperate perfectly with Marshal Nashin Haiguo Iwa. Marshal Iwa personally gave guidance on the battle process and techniques of the battle, coupled with his battle plan, which led to another victory with less on the battlefield. There are many, the weak defeats the strong, and this is the case for all 7 groups. The most astonishing thing was the casualty ratio of both sides in this battle. Except for the slight casualties in the war with the Western country, the casualties of the 7 Root Army were not large at all. The most exaggerated thing was that one of the countries used 30,000 troops to fight against the enemy's 100,000 troops, and defeated its main force in one night. Army, there were about 20,000 casualties among 100,000 people, but the number of casualties on Xinyi Kingdom was only a horribly small number of more than 200. Even if other aspects were more severe than this, in the most exaggerated battle between 50,000 people and the main force of the Western Kingdom, 150,000 troops, after the Xinhai army defeated the enemy, there were only more than 1,000 casualties. This can be described as a shocking report of the war. Could it be that the fighting power of the Black Country has not bottomed out yet? Didn't we agree that the national power would be consumed so much that it would be impossible to support the next war? Why can we still fight like this with the 7 kingdoms? Another thing that makes the top leaders and people of all countries feel confused is this the Black Country that will really conquer all the 7 kingdoms again as always? Totally impossible. The territory of the 7 kingdoms is several times that of the Xinhai kingdom that currently invades the 13 kingdoms, and its population is more than 10 times that of the original Xinhai kingdom. How is it possible for such a small country, and how dare it? And under such a battle report, people were shocked and a little worried, but they still tried to pretend to be calm, dictating the actions of Xinhai country, and even became a clown. Among them, the overlord country is the most serious. As the most powerful country in the world, it has already set its sights on Xinyi country. Even among the 7 countries that have border conflicts with Xinyi country, several of them are overtly or covertly overlord countries. Instigating. After this battle, after the overlord country was stunned for a while, a large number of media, officials, and domestic people started crazy actions against Xinhai country. The media smeared the country, claiming that the Black Country had betrayed its trust and actively attacked the 7 countries in a sneak attack. Officials seriously protested against the Xinhai kingdom's attack on other countries again, and equated this behavior with a country in ancient times that wanted to invade the world, saying that the Xinhai kingdom had embarked on a cruel and inhumane path. It's digging your own grave. The people were even more enthusiastic. Many people from the Xinhai country who immigrated to the overlord country, as well as people from the Xinhe country who did business and worked in the overlord country, were all targeted by them. There were even several incidents against the people from the Xinhe country of assassinations. For a time, people all over the world were in panic. We are seriously concerned about the persecution of black people and people of black origin overseas. In addition, the actions of black people against 7 countries this time are definitely self-defense and counter-attack. These 7 countries, there are examples of countries attacking our country with superior force, and there are videos to prove it. Xinheguo's reaction was as harsh as before, and he refused to give in even half a step. Many reporters also discovered that when facing reporters, especially those from major countries such as hegemons, the current attitude of foreign diplomats from Heilongjiang province is different from the previous few days, although they were strict but always slightly weak. They became extremely confident, and the words they spoke were definitely responses that made everyone look ugly. This shows that after this battle, the diplomats who originally regarded themselves as a small country also realized that the status of Nobue country was different from usual. Being able to resist 7 medium and large countries with one's own strength is an ability that is probably only possessed by the great powers of the world. There is even a question mark as to whether the hegemonic country can do the same thing of defeating the frontier armies of the 7 countries in one day. With such a strong army behind them as their support, how could these diplomats have the slightest fear? No fear. I believe that after the Xinhe kingdom fought this 7-nation border battle, no other country dared to harass their borders anymore, and their interests and territory of the 13 countries were preserved, but I am doubting. Does the black country want to have a fierce fight at the border, settle the matter, and live a life of devouring the interests of the 13 countries? Or does it want to continue to expand the war? This speculative statement comes from a military commentator from a hegemonic country who is impartial and fairly fair. After his speculation came out, the vast comment area in the entire overlord's country made every possible mockery of his words. Other critics and the media believed that this critic's words were simply ridiculous. Even if Nobue fought a border battle so beautifully, would he really dare to attack the 7 major countries? You know, although the 7 major countries lost, the country is backed by a vast territory, and there is a large amount of industrialization and population as the foundation for the war. Now the Xinhe kingdom has stretched reserves to fight others. If you want to invade someone's home, what will you do with it? The 7 kingdoms are not those 13 small countries. The critic who was bombarded by the media and public opinion was quickly removed, saying that he had some financial background to believe in the black country. What he said was alarmist, causing the 7 countries to misjudge the situation. And then adopted but no longer tough measures on the border affairs. No one knows what the final outcome will be for this critic who was bombarded for no apparent reason. In short, the critics are in a state of uproar throughout the world. However, within the Xinhe kingdom, they were not affected by this comment and were still mobilizing a large number of military forces. And this situation is quite normal. At least in the past few months, Xinhe country has been like this without stopping for a day. Otherwise, how could such a small country be able to defeat 13 surrounding countries? It's just that anyone with a discerning eye can see that under the back and forth movements of Nobue kingdom, something very different from the past movements is hidden. That is, there are more activities in the reserve force than imagined. Some student soldiers were even asked if they were willing to join the army as soon as they studied magic or cultivation in school. After answering yes, they would be formally invited to join the army. Letters, for young people, are naturally full of enthusiasm. Especially in recent times, the cries of war between letters and black countries have been very loud. They are also affected the most when they are young. After the enthusiasm surges, they often fill out the form and go home. Even if the family members want to refute, they can no longer do so because the order has been handed in. As a result, the reserve force has gradually reached a quarter of the country's population without any country expecting it. Xinhai country has a population of 30 to 40 million, and a quarter of the population means tens of millions of soldiers. As for the tens of millions of troops, if the black country really has the ability to mobilize all of them, the terrifying number will be several times greater than that of today's hegemonic country with a conventional military strength of less than 3 million. This is extremely terrifying power. Of course, once a war breaks out, the number of troops is not calculated like this. For example, in the last World War, the overlord country had not yet claimed hegemony. But once the war started, the number of troops found at Chiyuan was only a few 100,000 at first. A country with a population of hundreds of millions mobilized tens of millions of troops overnight. At its peak, more than 30 million people were in the army. This is also the reason why the hegemonic country won the last World War. They dominate the most feared spot to this day. However, with the current strength of the Xinhai kingdom, apart from 2 or 3 first-class powers such as the overlord that have such troop mobilization capabilities, there must be no other country that has such capabilities. Marshal Yan, I really didn't expect you to be able to do this again. I have to say that you shocked me again, but I want to say. Even if the Xinhai kingdom once again achieved something close to a miracle, there are still forces opposing Jia Yan within the country, and the representative of this force is the Generalissimo who had the kindness to meet him. This Generalissimo has long been marginalized at this moment. If he is not mentioned, no citizen will be able to think of this country's old marshal. At most, he will be regarded as the country's mascot. But he still wanted to intervene in the current war affairs. Although it seemed that he was persuaded by Jia Yan last time, he really saw the results of the war and found that the whole country was mobilizing. He eagerly entered Jia Yan again's office. "Oh, Senior Marshal, if you have anything to say, please say it directly, but I don't want to hear any more advice to stop fighting. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2576. Jia Yan sat on a chair, sorting out the documents in his hands, and replied to the Generalissimo calmly. "That's right, bad old man. If you say bad things again, Atissa won't spare you. Atissa's strategic plan is perfect." Etisha had already jumped up, rolled up her sleeves, and exposed her short, fat hands, just shy of going up to compete with the old man in real life. "Hey, you two, I believe in your abilities, but this time, are you sure you want to send all those children as reserve troops to the battlefield? I'm afraid they are only 15 or 16 years old. Let's forget about such children." "Okay," the general said earnestly. He no longer advised Jia Yan whether he wanted to rule the planet within a year, because this possibility had already vaguely appeared. But he really doesn't want to see Nobue country become a country that only knows war, especially the children. Today's 15 or 16-year-old children are actually discussing with great interest whether to go to the battlefield to make contributions. This for him, it was a scene he didn't want to see. "Senior Marshal, you also know that I am only 15 years old. I can go to the battlefield and even become the country's highest-ranking marshal. Why can't those children do it? Please don't be such a double standard, okay?" Jia Yan put the documents away, then raised his head and looked at the Generalissimo. The Generalissimo was in a trance for a while, especially after looking at Jia Yan's immature face that belonged to a 15 or 16-year-old child. His words froze and he didn't know what to say. You must know that he personally accepted Jia Yan into the army. Although at that time, he only thought about letting the child try in the army, but it is understandable that, like Jia Yan, he did let the child enlisted in the army, although the number is only a few million times worse. But, Marshal Jia Yan is shameless. Unexpectedly, he hadn't thought about how to respond, but Atisha on the other side seemed to have betrayed her, pointing at Jia Yan and jumping up. As an impartial pre-intellect, Edisha was full of disdain for Jia Yan's pretending to be young behavior, just as she sometimes looked up at the stars and looked at the two strong subordinates and guards who followed her. She said, "Tonight's night is so charming, just like a dream that has passed away." She didn't pretend to be a child. Why did Master Jia Yan still pretend to be young? Edisha wasn't happy, so she turned against him and helped the Generalissimo. Well. But the Generalissimo simply couldn't understand why Edisha said this. Although Jia Yan understood, he just rolled his eyes at her and didn't understand this little brat at all. "Edisha, you go out and play. I asked the kitchen to prepare a lot of ice cream today." Jia Yan waved his hand, preparing to let this little kid who couldn't distinguish between ourselves and the enemy leave this smokeless battlefield. "Ice cream? Okay. Editha is going now. Goodbye, two marshals." Editha's big, heartless eyes lit up, then she abandoned her half-finished battle plan and headed straight to the kitchen. "Okay, now we can talk," General Marshal Jia Yan sighed, and then spoke calmly and in a tone that was as touching as possible. "Actually, I can understand your compassion. I also hope that these children will not have to go to the battlefield, but the fact is that the situation does not allow it. You also know the situation on the planet today. Several major countries, led by the Overlord, have black faith in me. The country is already eyeing us, sharpening its sword, and is just about ready to bite us. The thing is no longer a question of whether I want to occupy this planet, but whether we will destroy our homeland if we don't continue. Generalissimo, you are an old-timer, an outstanding general. I did not want to talk about this when I spoke to you this time, but I wanted you to continue to carry forward your light and heat, because many war zones are gradually becoming vacant of personnel, and we need capable people like you to carry forward your talents again. The light and heat, so let's not talk about the reserves. This time, I only ask you. Are you willing to go to the front again? Yes. Please give Marshal Yan the order." The Generalissimo only listened to half of what he said, and his eyes turned red. When Jia Yan formally asked the question, he raised his palms and gave a standard military salute. "Very good, then go back and wait for orders. I will definitely choose a front that is most suitable for you." Jia Yan smiled. He knew that the so-called Generalissimo was looking for trouble every day, but he was too busy. The last time he pushed the front line past Xinbei country, he was unemployed. The unemployed old man naturally disliked everything and wanted to come. Looking for trouble. Now finding something to do for him will save him the trouble of being nagged every day. Looking at the satisfied look of the Generalissimo, who no longer talked about student soldiers or not, and walked away, Jia Yan picked up the battle report and battle plan himself. "It's very good. The voices, both domestically and internationally, are much quieter. Before he launched this war, there were a lot of noises both internationally and in the country. Of course, compared to the more hostile noises in the world, most of the voices in the country belonged to the Generalissimo, who was concerned about the country and the people, requiring him to be rational. But after the battle, the noise on the entire planet suddenly became silent. Internationally, it is because of its strength that Xinhai Kingdom's strength has shocked them, and they also know that to deal with such a bellicose country like Xinhai Kingdom, it is no longer useful to talk with words, or even use a blockade or something like that. Because the current territory occupied by Xinhai Kingdom is enough for him to digest for a long time. Even if the war continues, there is no risk of resource depletion in a short time. It is even simpler at home. Jia Yan has given everyone a sense of security. As long as they can continue to win, people who are worried about the country and the people are still talking nonsense. Generally speaking, the citizens of Xinhai Kingdom have already been influenced by Jia Yan to be quite bellicose. With such a big difference in the death and injury ratios, how can they have anything to worry about? Maybe those who are worried are already actively signing up to go to the battlefield after today. In the deep mountains and old forests with many peaks and mountains, a group of people wearing the uniforms of soldiers from the Xinyi Kingdom were chasing another group of soldiers from the Western Kingdom. What is unbelievable is that the total number of soldiers from the Nobue Kingdom is only a mere 300, but they are chasing down the 500 obviously more elite Western Army soldiers. Haha, are these soldiers from the Western country stupid? We obviously can't beat them in anything, but they can't beat us. What did their commander say when he saw us? Quickly deal with these rubbish, and then go back and surround our main force? Now, they are being chased like a lost family dog by our bunch of rubbish. Oh my god, this is the super special lion force that the Western Kingdom claims to be invincible? These are still lions, but they were beaten like this by our group of reservists who have never even been on the battlefield. Those who happily pursued the enemy were the recruits from Xinyi Kingdom who had just stepped onto the battlefield, or rather they were not recruits, they were veterans of Xinyi Kingdom who had served in the reserve forces. It is not entirely true that this group of reservists are all those who have never been on the battlefield. Each squad has a squad leader who has been on the battlefields of Nobue and Nobubai. Therefore, with their leadership, obedience, and dispatch efficiency neither is too bad. But even so, how could they, a group of new recruits who could hardly even shoot a gun, fight like this against 500 of the enemy's most elite troops? In fact, it is very simple, that is, they have double guarantees behind them. One is the targeted plan specially formulated by Edisha for this small battle. This plan is as detailed as the hilltop where the company personnel will encounter the opponent, such and such standing in a certain position, how so and so is going to fight, etc. It is almost like writing a script and asking the other party to act out with the soldiers of Nobue country. Under such a situation of knowing themselves and the enemy, the Xinhai army has a stronger backing, that is, Jia Yan personally directs their operations. Or it should be said that Jia Yan channeled a little bit of his spirit to help direct the battle. This is equivalent to having a domain lord level boss commanding everyone behind him. Jia Yan is a person who can control hundreds of clones to fight at the same time, and now he is just dealing with this kind of small level weak war. For him, it is not even a pressure. After all, it is said that there are millions of troops fighting in a melee, and it is not there are wars happening all the time, and his multi-line command can only have dozens of battles happening at the same time. It is simply a waste of time for his multitasking ability. Team 14, left 139, shooting. Team 18, 32nd position on the right, sniper. Receive. Listening to the cold voice coming from the earphones, the commander of the unit nodded in agreement, and then began to direct directly. This is the way they fight. Even if there is something wrong with the detailed plan sent by Edisha, Marshal Jia Yan, the brain, will correct the mistakes so that the war will not change at all. Even if there are extremely unexpected situations, such as the enemy ambushing an unexpectedly large force, the entire team faces a desperate situation. But soon a special rescue force that has been prepared will appear, and the composition of this special force is all high-level magicians, great swordsmen, and cultivators with even more bizarre abilities. They often sit in the center for a long time, and before the small troops suffer heavy casualties, they will show up to snipe and kill the enemy's unexpected key points, or even directly level a front line. This is Jia Yan's fighting method, a fighting method that only belongs to the domain lord level powerhouse. A strategy that no one else can copy. Without his own multitasking ability, extensive knowledge, and domain lord level magnanimity, there is no such terrifying intelligent brain reincarnation as Edita. Then it would be impossible to copy his tactics, and in this world, the only ones who could copy his tactics were the other subordinates led by Jia Yan and the White Dolphins. Die. The final decisive battle is on the top of the mountain over there. As Marshal Jia Yan said, they will besiege from the west, which happens to be not far in front of us. Come on, cultivators, use your flying swords, Marshal, go over and hide the high-yield explosives, and when they come over, they will explode. Yes. The entire unit made final preparations for combat, and not long after, an earth-shattering explosion was heard, and a total of 500 soldiers from the Lion Special Forces of the Western Kingdom went to the Western Heaven. We won. This war was too simple to fight. It was so simple that it didn't seem like we were dealing with 500 special forces from the Western countries. I was watching their explanation on TV back then, saying that they were the strongest troops in this region. I was amazed when I saw it. I didn't expect that I would deal with so many today. Nonsense, how could we do it ourselves? This is all the result of Marshal Jia Yan. Yes, Marshal Yan was behind the scenes and was giving guidance. Otherwise, how could I have won by myself? The entire campaign was filled with similar rhetoric. The war with the 7 major countries was started, and gradually, it was artificially manipulated by the outside world. The Xinhe kingdom wanted to rely on this war to calm down the border and rest for a period of time. It seemed that it was different. As a result, the whole world became noisy again. That is the Xinhe kingdom, which seems to be gradually moving its troops into the hinterland of the 7 countries. Is this the idea of preparing to break into other people's countries? It's so ridiculous that it can't possibly be good. You fought until your reserves were exhausted, so you could barely manage to send out more than 2 million new troops to win the border war, but you still want to annihilate the hinterland of the 7 kingdoms? I'm afraid I don't know how to write the word death. The entire international public opinion was shocked by what Xinhe did, and there was another round of cynicism. The 7 countries went to the media and issued a declaration, saying that they would give a strong attack to countries like Xinhe. In a head-on attack, the overlord country applauded behind it and promised to support a large number of weapons and equipment. But then, Nobue Kingdom, who was thought to be just sending troops to the 7 kingdoms to die, once again performed another unbelievable act. That's what they call reserves, and they are really endless. A large number of new soldiers had begun training as early as the initial war with the Xinbei Kingdom. Now they have finally transformed into formal soldiers and rushed to the battlefield. You must know that these soldiers of the Xinhe Kingdom have probably never left the Xinhe Kingdom in their lives. Even within the 13 countries that are close to each other, few people from the Xinhe Kingdom have traveled there. But now, as soon as they go to the battlefield, they rush to the 7 major countries that are far further than the 13 kingdoms. The distance is far away, and even the topography, customs are different. But by chance, countless young people from the Black Country set foot on the battlefield. Moreover, Jia Yan has not yet upheld the tradition of preferring boys over girls on this planet, and uttered the famous saying of the great man on earth, "Women can also hold up half the sky." After that, countless girls who responded to the call suddenly appeared. In fact, many of them had already been invited and trained for a month or 2. With the factor of women, the replenishment of troops becomes faster and stronger. In this world, although the status of women is not very high, there are definitely many women who are strong. After all, it doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman in cultivation, some women's combat effectiveness is still at the top of the world. On some planets, women are in sole control, and there is even a daughter country. So for these planets, it is just a tradition that women do not go to the battlefield, but it does not mean that women have no fighting ability. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2577. As soon as Jia Yan's declaration came out, countless women's troops emerged, and they only needed to show off their combat skills. There was no need to think too much about experience and the lack of effective commanders, because behind them, with the help of 2 intelligent brains, they made up for the biggest shortcomings of women's combat, and became almost as good as male soldiers. Big news. Xinhe Kingdom has tens of millions of new recruits for no reason. Is this a phenomenon that wants to bulldoze the 7 kingdoms? How big is the ambition of the Black Kingdom? Is there really no one who can stop this bully dog from Xinhai country? When will the overlord country stand up? It's time for the world to wake up. The Xinhai kingdom's wolfish ambitions are probably far more than just attacking the 13 kingdoms. In the Xinyi kingdom, a large number of pre-prepared vehicles were transporting a steady stream of new soldiers to the 7 kingdoms battlefield thousands of miles away. The next day, the entire international community was like an earthquake wave. Newspapers from all national media, the news about the large-scale emergence of new recruits from the Black Kingdom was written in shocking style on the front pages. You know, the war in Xinyi country has always been the focus of attention on the entire planet. Nowadays, it is believed that the incident will calm down. Either the Black country will stick to the interests of the 13 countries, or it will give some benefits to other countries. In short, the situation will soon return to calm. A large number of media are still unable to find a gimmick to write about. And was exhausted. But I didn't expect that Xinhai country would actually play according to the cards. They had already trained a large number of new recruits. Such large-scale mobilization and troop transfer cannot be hidden from informants and spies of other countries. According to a rough estimate, the number of soldiers mobilized by Xinhai Kingdom this time is probably in the tens of millions. The number of 10 million soldiers directly dwarfs the 2 to 3 million of the hegemonic country with the largest army in the world today, and squeezes it into the largest number 1 army on the planet. As a result, it attracted worldwide attention. Of course, the media and experts from all walks of life are just worried that the world will not be in chaos, and what they say is a bit alarmist. But it does not prevent people from realizing that the ambition of Xinhai country is not just as simple as annexing the 13 kingdoms. Maybe. They mobilized tens of millions of new soldiers. Do they want to annex even the 7 kingdoms? How can it be? The order of magnitude of the 7 kingdoms cannot be described just by the number of soldiers. When the 13 small countries are placed in front of the 7 major countries, it is like a small witch. It is said that there are 10 million recruits, but when placed in front of the 7 countries with full firepower at present, that is trivial. For example, if the strongest Western country mobilizes, I am afraid that all 10 million soldiers will be swallowed up by the Western country, leaving no trace behind. What's more, the tens of millions of new soldiers seem to have been spread to 7 battlefields. After being dispersed, each battlefield will be divided into more than 1 million people. Where are they? Among the 7 countries, even the weakest one has a regular army of 8 to 9 million people, and the reserve force is maintained at 3 to 4 million year-round. If a nationwide mobilization is carried out like the Shinkuro Kingdom, tens of millions of troops can be mobilized in an instant. The squeeze-type mobilization may be able to pull out nearly 20 million soldiers. Not to mention the Western country, a large country with a population of hundreds of millions. If the whole country really wanted to unite as one, it might produce 30 to 40 million high-quality troops, which would give even the overlord a huge headache. Of course, having fought in consecutive battles, especially when dealing with the elite border troops of the 7 countries, the Nobue army, which showed astonishing combat effectiveness, is not an opponent that can be underestimated. This will be a protracted war, and if it continues for a long time, Xinhai Kingdom, which is already very weak, is destined to be the loser in the war of attrition. The only doubt is how long Xinhai Kingdom can persist. The above argument comes from a military commentator in the hegemonic country. As soon as this argument came out, people from all over the world who had been frightened by the crazy actions and amazing combat power of the Shinkoku Kingdom suddenly seemed to have found a backbone, and subconsciously regarded this commentator's argument as the mainstream. The threat from Xinhai country is great, but it is wrong to be too afraid. His country is weak, which is his biggest weakness. Want to conquer 7 large countries with 10 million soldiers, all of them new soldiers. What a beautiful thought. So losing is certain, everyone can just watch the show. In this way, with a large number of people feeling concerned, the argument that the Black Country may cause a world war has once again subsided. They were just waiting to see what the scene would be like after this new recruit from the Black Country had a head-on confrontation with the 7 great nations, which was far beyond their ability to deal with. Maybe. Will the new recruits of the Shinkuro Kingdom, who have just joined the battlefield, especially those with many female troops, change from the previous strength of the Shinkuro Kingdom troops to collapse at the first touch? In fact, their wishes were soon dashed. After learning the news that a large number of troops in the Shinyui Kingdom were being transferred, the troops of the 7 countries responded quickly. They adjusted a large number of strong men and a large number of military flying equipment, including supersonic aircraft. On the second day after the transfer of the new recruits, the 7 major countries seemed to have discussed the new recruits' transportation vehicles and had a final discussion. A grand welcome feast, air raid. There is no doubt that in terms of advanced weapons and equipment, the Xinhei Kingdom is not even the slightest bit different from the 7 major countries. If the Xinhei soldiers are strong enough with the same level of equipment, then everyone believes that Xinhei is absolutely helpless when faced with the generation gap in weapons and equipment. Similar to the previous Earth, the Air Force on this planet is also one of the supreme weapon values. Boom boom boom. The overwhelming roar of fighter planes, coupled with the sound of flying bombs from a large number of magic ships, shook the entire Earth with shock waves. Some of the new recruits who had just arrived at the border had just entered the barracks to report, and some were on vehicles halfway when they encountered this overwhelming and brutal attack. This airstrike launched by the 7 countries was unprecedented. The battle line spanned thousands of kilometers. The 7 countries launched this attack together, vowing to give the new recruits of the Black Country a head-on attack. This attack can be said to be quite unexpected. Although the Nobue Kingdom had information about a possible airstrike, they launched the report too quickly. The airstrike arrived just after the information was obtained. Therefore, the unprepared Shinkuro Kingdom's front line was immediately swallowed up by a large sea of fire. Mountains, roads, and hidden bunkers that stretched for unknown distances were all affected by the explosion. From the moment the attack was launched, the 7 countries unified the attack and broadcast it live on domestic and international media platforms. Although a large number of people are criticizing the Black Country on the internet, saying that they are a small country, the Black Country has won great victories time and time again, and all of them have been with less and more, which has made people in many countries feel uneasy about it. Shinkuro has a natural fear, and believes that Shinkuro's combat effectiveness cannot be just based on the surface, because no one knows whether the seemingly weak Shinkuro force will immediately wipe out an ace unit. At this moment, the scenes of the bombing of Shinyui Kingdom are shown to people from all over the planet, especially the scenes of the recruits of Shinyui Kingdom dying miserably under the bombing, which will definitely make people blind to Shinyui Kingdom. The fear disappears, and as long as confidence in Shinkuro is established, the entire international community may speed up the process of conquering Shinkuro. All this is predicated. That is, this sudden large-scale air raid, which consumed a lot of energy from the 7 major powers and was covered up, was real and effective. Airstrike. Damn it, why is there an air raid? Isn't this within our country? How dare this Western country? Where's our Air Force? Hurry up and deal with them. There are magicians taking off. There are also cultivators who have released flying swords to attack these planes. But they are too fast, neither magic nor flying swords can kill them. Damn it, it's amazing to have good weapons and equipment. In the sky, a large number of fighter planes are circling and roaring, and our recruits are not waiting to be slaughtered. In this world with a messy power system, there will be many people with various abilities, whether they are recruits or veterans. For example, among the new recruits, together with some of the veterans transported, they are magicians and the like. They can quickly release magical defense barriers to block bombs or ground attack weapons from above. Cultivators are quick to use formations or unique cultivation methods, and their defensive capabilities are unparalleled. Everyone looks at the Xinhai army on the screen. They have indeed started to defend. Although they are new recruits, the Xinhai army is the Xinhai army. They can grow from a small country to a big country in less than half a year. Sure enough, they are weak and do this at the very least, but, how far can this group of recruits go? On one of the largest TV stations in the Western country, what can be called the largest air raid in the history of the Western country is being broadcast. The host talked eloquently and was not surprised at all that Xinhai country defended the first wave of air strikes. Because no matter what level of bombing, as long as it is done in this world, it is likely to be defended. After all, personal combat effectiveness is different from that of people on Earth. What they want to see is how Xinhai will perform next. There is an absolute difference in personal ability due to the generation difference in weapons and equipment. If they cannot prevent the second wave, it means that the entire recruit camp will not be far away from beginning to collapse. The people of the entire Western country were all sitting in front of the TV, watching this sudden and unprecedented air raid. They expected that their troops could use their superiority in strength and generation to defeat the Xinhai kingdom, which was probably the largest new army on the land. Otherwise, they would gain a foothold and take control of the war. After using their skills, there might be a large number of war-killing weapons as terrifying as the soldiers of the Black Kingdom of Lao Xian. Yes, everyone knows that the current Xinhai kingdom has unparalleled combat power. If you want to defeat the momentum of Xinhai kingdom, you can only hope that the new soldiers will be wiped out before they are familiar with the battlefield. With tens of millions of troops, if they are defeated without the use of Daichi's weapons, not only will the Seven Kingdoms be truly wiped out, but it will give all the Seven Kingdoms a headache for a while. The second wave of air strikes began soon, and the host quickly became energetic. Look, our heroic fighter planes and magic cultivation warships are looking back again, preparing to give another blow to the new recruits of the Xinhai kingdom. However, the enemies can only be directly destroyed by us under our attack, completely unstoppable, ha ha, ha ha. Smiling and laughing, the host's expression suddenly froze. Because he saw that one of the fighter planes in the picture was hit by a huge energy shot from below. This was not an isolated case. When he had already thought that the matter was settled, huge streams of energy, all of them black energy, rose into the sky from below and directly penetrated the fighter planes and warships. Some of them disintegrated in the air, or exploded into a ball of fire. What's going on? Impossible. Do each of these new recruits have anti-aircraft weapons? I don't believe it. The host was in complete disbelief. Because looking around, there were a lot of lights rising into the sky everywhere in the camera, aiming at the thousands of fighter planes and warships in the sky to launch a counterattack. If Xinhai country has such good equipment, how much does it cost? Besides, shouldn't this kind of equipment be armaments that are restricted from sale by all countries? How could it be possible that Black country could have bought so many of them quietly? In addition, even if there is a place to buy it, the light of this energy is a bit weirder. It is a pure black light. It seems that in the history of this planet, no one has ever seen anyone develop such a weapon light. As we all know, in this world, the energy of white dolphins occupies the majority, that is, the white energy of the white god occupies the majority. The energy of practitioners and weapons is generally white. Black is either converted by special means, or it is black energy. As for the energy weapons of the black god, at least there are not many on this planet, because they are of no value. Spending a lot of money to research black energy consumes a lot of money, and it is almost impossible to obtain greater effects than white energy. Xinhai country shoots a large amount of black energy light waves into the sky, which makes people wonder whether Xinhai country has done some research on the power of black gods. After all, Xinhai country is a country that mainly believes in black. It is possible to have such a weapon. But something is wrong. How could there be no news about such a large-scale equipment force? The fighter plane that was photographed was also a little out of control. It was trying to leave the battlefield quickly while dodging, but it was still extremely unlucky to be hit by a ray of light. In the picture, the pilot could only be heard yelling something, and then the fighter plane flew very fast, stalled and hit the ground. The last shot of the screen shows a large number of new recruits from the Nobue Kingdom appearing on the ground. These new recruits were naturally extremely frightened when faced with the sudden air raid, and their faces were extremely ugly. But they surprised others. They were a group of 6 people, standing tightly together. Everyone released their own various cultivation powers, such as magic, fighting spirit, and cultivator spirit. Powerful. To name a few. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2578. In short, these different energies, even things with different energy sizes, are gathered in one place in a unique way. After being mastered by their squad leader, he then stretches his palms to the sky. A large amount of black light energy is released by the palms of these squad leaders. What? It's not weapons and equipment. But it's released from the human body. Damn. What's going on? The new recruits of the Nobue Kingdom can actually do such a move. Boom. Before the host and all the people could react, the fighter plane that was filming fell directly to the ground, making a deafening explosion. After the sound, the screen was cut off and the camera returned to the studio. The host's somewhat unnatural face was on the screen. He had been steadfast in his vow just now, but now he could no longer hide the panic in his heart. You know, in the short time they saw the fighter plane on the screen, half of it was destroyed by the black energy in the recruit phalanx below. Whether the remaining half can complete the mission depends on destiny. Today's program ends here. I hope that our country's warriors on the front line will be able to win. Thank you all for watching. See you next time. After a few hurried words, the program signal was cut off, and the screen returned to the original program at this time. However, even if the signal is cut off, the previous broadcast cannot be retracted. People who saw the information about this air raid campaign could not hide their inner discomfort and panic, and began to go online to share their opinions and feelings with everyone, and soon a large number of the hot searches and keywords were all occupied by this air raid campaign. The entire air raid campaign was launched in almost every country with such high spirits, but ended in a rather embarrassing and somewhat panicky mood. Failed. How is it possible? Those are just new recruits. It is said that a large number of new recruits from the Xinhe Kingdom are pure newcomers who have not undergone a few months of training. How come we can't even sneak attack and defeat such soldiers? Not long after, the command posts of the 7 powers were filled with mourners. They have already received intelligence, saying that among the Air Force coalitions sent by the 7 major countries, almost no one has achieved greater results. In other words, their 7-nation joint air force, which accounted for almost half of their respective countries' air force, was completely defeated in the air attack. Every commander feels heavy in his heart. Not to mention the huge losses of various air force fighters and warships totaling 20,000 to 30,000 in this joint force, just the so-called Shinkuro Kingdom recruits, the air defense capabilities of the recruits, and their weird new combat methods, all they saw a disturbing possibility. That is, will this group of new recruits, who seem to be weak beings on the battlefield, perform like they did in this battle, and make everyone's jaw drop? And if they can really extend their performance in this battle to the following ordinary wars, then the 7 major countries will really be worried. All countries that are hostile to Nobue country feel heavy in their hearts. This was a battle that was originally full of confidence, but turned out to be 180 degrees later. The far-reaching impact of this battle was far beyond expectations. However, the expected impact was that the Seven Kingdoms staged a teaching for tens of millions of recruits from the Xinhe Kingdom, and charged tens of millions of lives for it. Cost. But things went against expectations, and the final result was completely different. The air forces of the 7 countries that participated in the battle suffered more than 90% damage, and only less than 10% of the fighters and warships that finally escaped back to their home airports. On the other hand, when it comes to the new recruits from Shinkoku, millions of losses? Impossible. Hundreds of thousands of losses? Doesn't exist at all. So tens of thousands? No, no, no. In this battle, the total number of recruits involved in the phalanx was as high as 5 to 6 million, but the total casualties were only a pitiful 200 or so. The impact of this battle was all due to the various countries that shocked the fighting power of Shinkuro. Even the new recruits who went into battle for the first time were so terrifying. It seems that it was because of the sequelae of this battle, and it seemed that this great victory gave Nobue Kingdom the courage. The recruits of Nobue Kingdom who had just arrived in their respective units began their conquest in full swing. Although the situation on each front was different due to terrain and humanistic factors, in general, they began to perform combat missions on the 3rd day after arriving at the military camp at the earliest. And it's another jaw-dropping combat power. They know the weird Black God coordination technique. Wow, Master, the battle plan you taught the new recruits is so awesome. Puff, 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 beat, 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 win. In the capital of Xinhe Kingdom, Jiayan and Edisha, who were controlling the battle remotely, were not as nervous as many people thought. Edisha was wearing a big cute princess hat, jumping up and down on the floor playing games, making her fluffy princess dress sway. Haha, it's just a simple variation of my yin-yang dao joint tactics. If you think this is powerful, you've seen fake yin-yang dao joint tactics before. Jia Yan smiled and couldn't help but stretched out his hand, touched the head of little Edisha who was jumping up and down on the sofa, and messed up her hair again. Owner. Edisha got angry, gave Jia Yan a hard look, and then started to arrange her hair with her short hands. Do you already know that you need to be beautiful? It really looks more and more like life. Jia Yan nodded. Of course, Edissa is the cutest and most beautiful. She will always be the cutest and most beautiful child. Edissa ruffled her hair narcissistically and became very happy again. She used to have a temper like that of a child, but now she has really turned into a brat, which is quite funny. Since our army's combat advance has become faster, and the future reserve population of more than 20 million is already undergoing intensive training, then after this war, we will officially announce. Rule the entire planet. Jia Yan gave the order as cold as ice. Rule. Editha will be the military advisor. He he he. Editha danced weird dances and sang songs she made up. She really likes the feeling of becoming alive now. Without the constraints of the 3 principles of intelligence and brain, and without the feeling of computer instructions suppressing her head, she felt that she was unrestrained. She could care about nothing except her master, and she was quite relaxed and comfortable. By the way, why did you only absorb so much of the energy you were asked to absorb? All the knowledge of cultivation should be in your memory. Do you still need me, master, to teach you? Jia Yan suddenly changed the topic, making Edisha froze. Master, there is a bad guy who told me not to practice, otherwise he will beat Editha. Edisha pretended to look pitiful and weeping, but her childish lies could be used to deceive children of the same age, but she wanted to use them to deceive Jia Yan? Let's train for a few hundred more years before we talk about it. Jia Yan looked at her silently, making this little kid's hair stand on end. Edisha doesn't want to practice. It's so tiring and boring. Edisha wants to play and watch cartoons. Edisha shook her head, suppressed the tears that overflowed from her eyes, and became confident as if she had changed her face. You are not allowed to play. Before you were reborn in this body, you promised to practice hard. Don't you want to continue to travel across the star sea with your master? Ugh. Edisha felt extremely painful after hearing Jia Yan's harsh words. Her playful nature made her not want to engage in such a non-nutritious thing as cultivation, but if she did not practice, she could not continue to use this life body to continue her life with Jia Yan, so she was in great pain. Eat when you are in pain. Edisha jumped to the other side of the sofa, tore open the snack bag, grabbed a lot of snacks from inside, and started eating. Shat, tomorrow, I will start practicing. Today, I will not practice mindfulness. Jia Yan was a little helpless. He said that today will become tomorrow, and tomorrow will become the day after tomorrow. Over the past few days, he has figured out the idea of this little girl who was reborn as a human being. She is just lazy. When she was a Ji now, there was a mechanism to restrain her so that she could not be lazy. Now that she has become an unrestrained living being, her laziness is revealed. No, let's start today. I have prepared the energy for your practice today in the practice room. You are not allowed to watch cartoons until you have devoured it. Go quickly. Huh? Okay then. Editha was extremely shocked, aggrieved, and reluctant to give up, and finally dragged her little feet as heavy as 1,000 pieces to the practice room. But looking back on the way, I found that Jia Yan didn't observe her, and came back secretly. He stuffed the snack bags that were thrown into a small mountain on the sofa into his arms. He stuffed 10 bags into his arms, and then he smiled happily and bare his little feet. Run to the training room. This little guy. Jia Yan then turned his attention to her little back and felt that this weird gadget would definitely be very interesting in the future. The previous edition was interesting enough, but it was a brain with program limitations, so her character was restricted. After becoming a real life, Edisha seems to have liberated her nature and has a carefree temperament. Although she is very cute, she may also be a bit noisy and annoying. However, on the long road to becoming strong, what is often missing is not a powerful helper, but someone who can make one happy, and Edisha is just such a person. She was still her, that was enough. Jia Yan picked up the document and began to approve it. Letter from the Black Country to the World. The name of Jia Yan's document is probably words that will shock the entire planet's inhabitants. And this document was just the beginning of Jia Yan's startle that shocked them all. The content in it would change the situation of the entire planet even more, and let people know that this planet would truly enter a chaotic world. That's right, the notice he was drafting revealed that he was going to lead the huge army of the Xinhe Kingdom to conquer the entire planet, and eventually destroy all the countries and people on the planet, and of course, more importantly, the resources. All the information at your fingertips. Although it is revealed everywhere that he is for the benefit of humans, aliens, and various sects who practice skills on the entire planet. But this does not prevent people from seeing the essence through the phenomenon. He is preparing to attack the entire planet. Haha, I don't know what the expressions of the high-level officials of these countries will be like tomorrow when they see my document. It will definitely be quite exciting, especially those from the Overlord country. Jia Yan dried the drafted document, then called the secretary with a cold expression and asked her to hand the document to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and publicize it to the outside world. It is worth mentioning that when Jia Yan saw the secretary recently, her expressionless appearance seemed to have changed slightly, that is, she had more makeup, and her military uniform style also seemed to be vaguely different. It was a date, and it felt a little more exposed. This is also a naughty little girl. Jia Yan couldn't laugh or cry, of course he wouldn't be fooled. I have so many women under control, so there is no reason for me to change my original intention in the hands of a little bitch like you. That would be a shame for Satsumagori. Jia Yan has a family full of children and grandchildren. Even if he does something here now, I'm afraid Satsuma Temple and the others may not know about it, but this matter concerns the environment. Since he has a stable family, he will not let it go. Fall into inner turmoil again. Only experienced men can probably understand this. The next day, Jia Yan's announcement to the world he had just written on his desk finally officially entered the world stage. Although the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, National Defense Department, and the current president of Xinhai, etc., were all shocked beyond measure after Jia Yan's document was submitted yesterday, and an emergency meeting was held to discuss it. But they did not dare to disturb Jia Yan, or in other words, their discussion might involve many disrespectful topics towards Jia Yan, so they did not let Jia Yan go. But in the end, the document was released. Find the bookstore. When reading this message to the world, the diplomat, who has been used to seeing big storms recently, could not help but tremble in his voice. To sum up the above, there are too many countries on this planet, resources are unevenly distributed, and there are also a large number of national civil servants who waste countless resources in irrelevant places. This is a huge loss to our planet and is preventing us from moving forward. The original sin of falling into the outer starry sky, so our country has decided to shoulder its responsibilities and will guide the people on the entire planet to the road to true prosperity and strength. Jia Yan. When the diplomat said the above words, there was silence underneath. It took a while after the words were finished before any of the reporters reacted. They chewed on the meaning of the text, and finally discovered to their horror that the meaning of this text seemed to express that the Xinhai kingdom was preparing to rule the entire planet. In other words, are they preparing to fight a world war? Oh my gosh, this is big news. Regardless of whether the black country can do it or not, reporters and diplomats from these countries, like cats that smelled fishy smell, hurriedly asked questions. Excuse me, Mr. Diplomat, can we take what you mean to mean that the Shinkuro kingdom is now ready to fight against all countries on the entire planet? It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2579. No, we believe that black country has always been a country that puts peace first. Peace. After fighting against 13 countries, and now still fighting against 7 countries, you say you are peaceful? If I believed it, I would be stupid. Is this declaration drafted by Marshal Jia Yan? Does this mean that Marshal Jia Yan of your country is already coveting the highest authority on this planet? Does he want to be the uncrowned king of this planet? This reporter, please speak with respect. Marshal Yan of our country is definitely not the kind of person you say. Marshal Yan has said that he has a kind heart and is ready to make this planet more beautiful and friendly. People. He had only been a marshal for 2 or 3 months, but he had already killed people from more than a dozen countries. Friendly. Believe it or not. In this press conference of Xinhaiguo, everyone only felt one concept. That is, from top to bottom, Xinhaiguo is no longer prepared to be an individual. Full of nonsense. That Marshal Yan actually spoke nonsense and made some kind of admonishment to the world, which meant that he wanted to conquer the whole planet. How dare you, a high-ranking official from a black country, to read such a shameless document in plain text? It's true that since Jia Yan came to power, everyone in the Xinhai kingdom has become so self-confident that even diplomats have become like this. His words can make people feel empty. They all follow what Jia Yan says. But if the letter to the world that Jia Yan mentioned was his true thoughts, that's a big deal. Although Jia Yan's words seem to be talking nonsense, it doesn't matter if ordinary people talk nonsense. If the person who makes such nonsense is the current marshal of the Xinhai kingdom, Jia Yan, then the meaning of the matter is completely different from that of ordinary people talking nonsense. Son. Because Jia Yan has this ability. Although no one believes that he can really rule and occupy this planet, there is one thing that is recognized by the world. That is, if Marshal Yan of the Xinhe Kingdom is ranked second in terms of command and combat capabilities, no one on the planet today would dare to be ranked first. At least until they have fought against Jia Yan and defeated him, no country will be ranked first. Even the current top military generals of the overlord country dare not say such words. In short, after Jia Yan asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to publicize the above words to the outside world, the entire planet instantly became uproar. There are a lot of news media, and it feels like there is new news to dig into. The people also attach great importance to this matter, because this is different from ordinary gossip news. This is a matter of life and death for all people. Therefore, media news sells well, and people's attention to this matter is also rising crazily. The announcement to the world soon became public knowledge. Countless people said that Jia Yan, a young general from a small country, was so arrogant that he would be arrogant if he could win some small countries, and he would definitely suffer in the future. But there are also a small number of people who, in silence, silently learned more about Fan Xinhe and Xinhe's recent actions, including the combat effectiveness of their army, and finally fell silent. The current combat power of Xinhe country may really be capable of starting a war that affects most of the planets, which is commonly known as a world war. And if a world war really breaks out, the entire world will fall into the footsteps of the last world war 100 or 200 years ago, and the people will be in dire straits. It will take decades for the entire world to recover. In fact, whether it is those who value Nobuhiguo's remarks or those who laugh at their arrogance, this has been verified to some extent. That is to believe that the Black Country is a country that does have certain capabilities in everyone's mind. Otherwise, if it were a small country with a population of several thousand, would the above remarks cause a worldwide topic? It's simply impossible, so no matter whether some people laugh at it or not, in fact, in their hearts, they all agree that Xinhe is quite capable. Probably in response to the document from the country's top general, the next day, the new and old Shinkuro forces who had gradually invaded the Seven Kingdoms launched a fierce attack in unison. After 2 or 3 days of polishing at the border, the entire Xinyi kingdom's new recruits seemed to have slowly mastered the skills of joint warfare. This was also expected by Jia Yan. And the first large-scale battle they launched against the Seven Kingdoms directly seemed to confirm Jia Yan's prophecy to the world. Boom! The entire world exploded with earth-shaking explosions, and the flashing red light seemed to swallow up the entire earth, creating a doomsday scene of large tracts of heaven and earth shattering. The 6-person team that worked together to create the scene felt that even they themselves were shocked. Within the range of this attack, there was a magician who was originally flying in the sky. He was severely hit by this attack and fell to the ground. He did not know whether he was alive or dead. The reason why this 6-person group was stunned was that the desperate attack they just made had such an effect that even they themselves were shocked. Because the magician they faced was one of the famous top 100 magicians on the entire Western Front. Find bookstore. You know, these are the top 100 frontline magicians in the Western country. Among all the magicians in the entire Western country, they can at least be ranked among the top 5,000. Considering the huge national power of the Western country, the strength of these top 5,000, placed in the original anyone who believes in the Black Country can enter the top 100. On weekdays, if the 6 ordinary soldiers of the Xinhe Kingdom encounter a magician of this strength in the outside world, there is absolutely only one ending, being beaten into a pig's head by the other party. Moreover, this kind of crushing strength is just like the venerable level from the outside world. Facing the existence of the heaven level, there is no reason and no possibility of resistance. But, they were ready to wait for death just now, but they finally remembered the skills taught by Marshal Jia Yan. They grouped together, gave up escape and defense, and directly launched a desperate attack. However, they did not expect that after the results came out, it was the result of the magician falling to the ground, leaving them intact. Did we do this? We are too strong. The 6 soldiers of the Xinhe kingdom were all new recruits, and they were matched with men and women. All of their faces were extremely young. They were all just students before they came to the battlefield. As former students, this group of young people were full of enthusiasm before going to the battlefield. They believed that although they and others could not catch up with Marshal Yan, who was also a young man, they could expand the country's territory on the battlefield and gain status. But this might have gone too fast. They thought that they and others had to adapt to the battlefield step by step, and their comrades around them died one after another before they could stand out. In the first battle, because I failed to perform the transfer task well, I lost confidence and fell behind. I was discovered by the enemy's magician and chased him. When I was desperate, I fought back brazenly, and then